Get inside, Jon, Ashura interrupted, much to his surprise. What? We are going to play a game, all right. She kept her voice as steady as she could manage. You are going to hide and wait for me or your aunt to come to find you. I don't want to play this game, she imagined he might have said tearfully once, the boy she remembered sending to Bear Island. But now he only looked at her through solemn, heavy eyes, and she realized again with a little sadness he was no longer that same little boy she could fool with a single comforting lie. You don't have to watch over me all the time anymore, Mother. He told her earnestly. I am not afraid. I can protect the both of us now. I don't doubt it, she traced his cheek gently. And there is no one I would rather have watching over me than you. But no matter how much you grow, it is my job as your mother to always make sure you are safe. Jorah Mormont's men are after you, not us. You are more important than you could ever know. More important than any of us. The words muddled him enough to where he grew hesitant. If Jorah is here, I want to stay. I have to take him down. I am your mother, she admonished him firmly, while tenderly tucking a stray curl behind his ear. You must listen to me, little one. It will all be handled. He headed under somewhat reluctantly, and they closed the trapdoor together before pushing the chair above it. I should have killed that soldier. Daisy shook her head, irate with herself. Jorah knew, and if there are horse riders outside. The Lannisters know I am here too. Ashura interrupted briskly, not wanting to hear any more. As if she hadn't put all that together the moment she had heard the sound of hoofs. They are outside for my head. Frustration, disappointment, and anger coiled in her stomach. This was not ever how she had wanted to go. Not to him. Borrowed time, she consoled herself. It was what should have happened had she done her duty and stayed with Elia in the first place. You should leave, she told the younger woman. While they still let you. I should, she smiled, her lip twisting sourly. But my lord husband gave Eddard Stark his word that you would return unharmed. So I shall stay and continue to do my duty. Not all of us Mormonts are as two-faced and traitorous as Jorah. Ned will understand, she countered tiredly. This will not reflect on you at all. The only one responsible for this is me. I left the ship of my own accord, and Jon needs someone trustworthy like you by his side. Stop. Just let me do this, Daisy nearly begs, and Ashura can see how much she needs this. This was all Jorah's doing. I swore to you I would look after the boy in your place, and I could not. I owe Jon that much, so let me try to protect his mother or die knowing I've regained House Mormont a little honor. Before she could argue any further, the door finally cracked open, wood chips flying everywhere, a single large shadow stepping forward. They sent in just one man. Daisy shakes her head confidently. That was a mistake. Ashura is not so sure. He may not as well be a man at all given the size of him at nearly 8 feet and 30 stones. Despite never having seen him before in her life, she has a fair idea of who he is. The woman comes with me, he says coldly. I don't think so, big boy. Daisy grins. You ought to leave if you wish to keep your head on your shoulders. If Arthur had been there as he should have, Ashura had often found herself speculating, he would have saved Elia. For the first time, she found herself doubting it. Such was the effortlessly with which Gregor Clegane disposed of the guards in front of him, leaving a splattering of blood and guts decorating the wall. Her friend pushed ahead immediately to fill the gap, and for a moment they actually seemed to be evenly matched. Daisy Mormont fought with a mace, perfect for dealing heavy and compact blows, and she had learned quickly from the other's mistakes. She flowed back and forth with her lithe form, close enough to strike and back out of reach. She was frustrating the knight, it was clear as day, and perhaps in a different setting, it might have been enough to eventually pull out victorious. But the limited space of the cabin hole eventually trapped her into closed quarters combat, and despite her best efforts soon she too was overcome. It was only when warm blood splashed over her face and a blood-curdling scream sounded in her ear did Ashura realize with horror that he had brought the sword down, hacking the Mormont heir's arm off. He was like an animal filled with bloodlust and savagery. Leave her be, you beast, she hissed, finally jolted into action, and the giant of a man stopped and turned toward her. It's me you are after, isn't it? This was him, the monster that had smashed that small, innocent baby gone like he was nothing more than a fruit. Allegedly, Ashura reminded herself. The princes of Dawn had never been able to demand the justice Elia deserved because the identity of her killer was never known. The rape and murder of a highborn lady, let alone a princess, was an unthinkable crime. If the killer's identity had ever been public, their head would be forced to roll. But Lord Tywine had been content to deflect the blame lost in the chaos of war, and Robert Baratheon had proceeded to pardon them all, considering the lack of concrete evidence. She only suspected it was him who had done it herself because of the pieces she had fit together between Ned's memories of the aftermath and her own talks with the townsfolk of King's Landing. She couldn't imagine very many people other than the one in front of her matching the description of the lumbering man that had been seen scaling towards the royal chambers. Suddenly an idea took her. A crazy and ridiculous idea, but one she was convinced might work. What if she could somehow get him angry enough to confess to what he had done? Even here in the heart of the Westerlands, there was nothing Lord Tywine could do after a revelation like that with multiple witnesses except grudgingly rid himself of his favorite pet, and the only cost to be borne of it would be her life. Ashura wasn't fool enough not to know she had been marked for death the moment they had learned she had stepped foot here. There was no escaping that anymore. But if she were destined to die in chains by Tywine Lannister's hand, the least she could do was take her princess killer with her. He would have been ordered to bring her in alive so the Warden of the West could pass the sentence himself, the smug self-serving cunt. If he did, and she had gotten him to admit to his actions, she could ensure his head came off right alongside hers. And even if he decided to kill her anyway in a flash of anger. Ashura's eyes flickered to Dace's struggling form. She was trying unsuccessfully to wrap a string around the arm and stop the blood loss. If she kept him occupied long enough for Benjen to arrive and get to the eldest Mormont daughter, there would still be a witness to his confession. And she would rather die here and now than have the last thing she saw be the pleased beady eyes of the Lord of Casterly Rock while they made a show of an axe taking out her neck. Either way, his rampage would be over, she decided. And Ashura would have one final piece of revenge to savor on the way out. For you, Elia. Move, he rumbled, making to grab at her arm. As if she would ever just willingly go anywhere with him. Still, she let him trudge along towards her, and when she deemed he had gotten close enough, Ashura spat directly onto his face, noting with satisfaction how he practically vibrated with rage. Go burn in hell, monster, she snarled, wielding the kitchen knife warningly. I am not taking a step out of here unless it's with your bloody head between my arms. Princess Elia Martell, do you remember her? What you did to her and her son will be the death of you, she taunted. She saw him wipe the spittle off his face, and it was clear he had forgotten all intentions of bringing her back anywhere. He had taken her bait. Good, she hid a grin. And strangely enough, she felt nothing else. What could he possibly do to her that would change anything? There was nothing of her personal reputation left to salvage across the realm, sullied as she was already considered. And she was more than ready to take a little pain for a worthwhile cause. Today, tomorrow, or 10 years from now, I swear one day your head will come off because of her, you mindless mutt. Princess Elia Martell of Dawn. Before Ashura could say any more, she felt his fist come down upon her with such force that when she hit the ground black spots danced along her line of sight. Stupid bitch, he bristled, yanking her by the hair, painfully making her cry out. Warning, sensitive material ahead. Suddenly she grunted from the load pressing against her back as he climbed on top of her. Your precious Elia Martell, he roared loudly in her ear. I honored her like this as well. She was a frail, broken little thing by the end, crying over her dead brat. There it is, she thought, a little surprised with how easy it had come. It was truly him. It infuriated her too, how he spoke of Elia. She had heard enough talk in her time in King's Landing of the frail, weak Dornish princess to fill her a lifetime. There had been so much to Elia beyond what the eye could see. She had always been so kind and clever, so calm and balanced no matter what she had to deal with, none of which any of them had cared to learn about her. They had made their judgments with little more than a single look, how a Dornish woman could have never been good enough for the Prince of Dragonstone. And more than any of them, Gregor Clegane certainly had no right. Not after what he had done. You are going to pay for it, she swore. Prince Oberyn would ensure that much the moment the news reached him. Before she could savor her victory completely, Ashura felt his hand groping roughly against her. She fought as much as she could, scratching, kicking, and clawing at him, but his weight on top of her was too much to even budge, let alone toss off. Ashura could feel his fingernails digging painfully into her thighs, and he finally forcibly parted them, allowing the smooth flesh of her legs broke free from the fabric that covered it. No, 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 she struggled desperately, panic crawling in her chest despite her best efforts. Ashura froze in place, shaking pitifully, no matter how much she wanted to kick him or punch him instead. I am not going to cry, she pushed back her tears. I am not going to make a sound. He may defile me, but I will not give him that satisfaction as well. Ashura couldn't do anything more as he dragged her towards him except shut her eyes tightly with a strangled whimper, the sound of her dress being torn to shreds resonating in her ear. She frowned, feeling him pull away all of a sudden and the sensation of a liquid dripping onto her skin. She opened her eyes to the realization it was blood. But not hers. It was his. There plugged between his shoulder and neck was the butter knife she had attempted to wield, and behind him. You leave my mother alone, the voice warned tightly. John, she realized in unbridled shock. How had he even gotten back up here? Suddenly, all her anger and determination gave way to pure horror. No, she thought in disbelief. This couldn't be happening. He couldn't be here. She could make out the shock in Gregor Clegane's expression, the fury and anger that he had actually been wounded, but by the time he turned to her he was only left smiling. The look sent shivers down her spine. She could make out the delight of torturing her with John's death first, and she made a desperate bid to grab at his legs. But he kicked her aside with ease, and a hard thud was the last thing she heard as she drowned out of consciousness. End of sensitive content. Jon Snow. So the wolf pup comes to defend the honor of Stark's bedthing, the man drawled. He raped the princess, Rhaenys' mother, Jon understood for the first time. Mother would never tell him anything about how her best friend had been killed, and he finally realized why. It was because this man had raped her and then murdered her with the very hand he had used to kill her babe. It was the most horrific tale Jon had ever heard. It made him want to cry. How could anyone do such a thing? Gregor Clegane was an anointed knight, a man who had sworn a sacred vow before all the gods to protect the very people he mistreated. It was the duty of the strong to defend the weak. That was what Jon had always been taught. And this man, who had been blessed with strength beyond belief, only used it to invoke terror. It all felt so wrong, it made him nauseous. This wasn't what it meant to be a knight. This was a mockery, an abomination. The sight of what he had done to the Mormont guards appalled him. He had no remorse for it, for all these fallen men he had barreled over who would never come back. He relished it even. It's not right, Jon repeated to himself. None of this is right at all. He went for the great sword in the corner, momentarily stumbling over its weight. How was anyone supposed to swing this? He judged with disbelief at the size of the blade, remembering how effortless the giant had picked the same weapon with a single hand. His own sword, which Aunt Daisy had once presented to him, had been handcrafted to fit his own smaller form. But this one was larger than all of the great swords he had seen before. It was even larger than his entire body from head to toe, and the effort to raise it alone was a strain although he was using both hands. The sight seemed to amuse the mountain. He rushed forward, feigning a strike at his leg, and just as he had anticipated, the mountain moved with him. Jon let the grubby paw move closer and closer, and right before it could make contact with him, he ducked. The speed of Jon's movements had taken him by surprise, and Jon could see the shock and realization flash in Gregor Clegane's eyes. He couldn't have gotten a cleaner look if the man had been dragged to his knees waiting to be beheaded, and Jon brings down the weapon right at the base above his spine. But somehow when he looked up, Sir Gregor Clegane was still standing. He had moved. The slash had grazed the side of his neck enough to make him scream in pain, but it was not even close to the killing wound that Jon had envisioned. That's not possible, he told himself while breathless and numb with astonishment. No man that size could possibly move with that kind of speed. He moved every bit as fast as me, Jon discerned, stumped. No one has ever moved as fast as me before. Before he knew what was happening, pain overwhelmed him and he fell to his knees, the sword clattering out of his reach. The coppery taste of blood filled his mouth, and when the mountain took an armored fist out of his stomach, Jon wanted to curl over and scream. Every breath grew painful, like he was being pierced in the lungs with 10,000 needles. He broke my ribs, Jon thought, gasping for air. with a single punch. His blurry eyes landed on Aunt Daisy, and he could make out her body lying across the cabin with blood seeping all around her. She had stopped moving altogether now, her severed arm scattered a couple of feet away. Not again, John thinks desperately, shutting his eyes. Another person he cared about taken away while he was too powerless to do anything. You think you are some knight in shining armor? Look. Sir Gregor grumbled lowly, grabbing at his hair forcefully and making him watch the carnage once more, and he can feel the tears welling up. I bet they all look at you with gratitude and affection, do they not? All those people you help. For their savior. The words are filled with disgust. You will watch, he ordered, voice as hard as breaking stone. And you can live. Watch. John thinks, befuddled. Watch what? It is only when his sight follows Sir Gregor's gaze that he realizes what the man means. Never. What kind of craven, pathetic creature was he being taken for? As if he would ever stand by and let this monster lay another hand on her just to save his own life. The offer was sadistic and cruel, yet uttered so casually as if made without a second thought. How many hundreds had Gregor Clegane done this to? How many people could only despair helplessly as he trampled over their spirits in such a manner? A parent watching their child murdered before them, a brother having to see his sister raped while he could not do anything back. Something coiled inside him, sharp and furious. It was an emotion he had never before felt. Rage. John reached out for the knife, only for an armored foot to come smashing down fiercely on his wrist. Ark, he screamed from the crushing pain. I said, the mountain snarled, stepping on top of his head and trapping him in place. You will watch. Or I will hold you down to watch as every man in the village takes her over and over again. It was like his bones had suddenly been ground into dust, and every movement pained more than he could ever describe. Still, I have to try, John tells himself. John, mother sobbed, having finally regained consciousness, and facing her makes John freeze in place. The sight of her hurt him. Blood seeped down half her face from the wound atop her forehead, where the mountain had slammed her into the ground. Darkening bruises and a black eye accompanied her torn skirt, and shame filled him at what he had allowed to happen to her. What kind of son cannot protect his own mother? But it was her eyes that hurt the most. They were the deepest, most expressive eyes John had ever known, and right then they were staring at him with more anguish than he had ever seen before. Stop, she begged, voice wavering. Just listen to him, John. I need you to live. That's all I need. A part of him wishes he could stop just so it would not hurt her. She did not deserve the pain of having to watch her only son die. But I have to do this, he thought regretfully. I could never live with myself if I didn't. It would be an insult to everything you raised me to be. And as selfish as it was, he could not bear even the thought of having to watch what the mountain had in mind. I have to make him angry enough to forget, angry enough to kill me. He fingers the knife, trying to slice Gregor Clegane's foot, and the attempt is enough to enrage him. You want to be a hero? He picked John up, squeezing his throat with a single meaty hand, and this time he did not hold back. Then die like all the others. You are too weak and pathetic to ever stand a chance against me. Ashura. No, 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 she whimpered. I'll leave him alone. I'll come with you, wherever you ask. Just let him go. But she was scratching and clawing to no avail as he stood unaffected, just like a mountain they called him after. Gods, please protect him, she prayed. Haven't you taken enough from me? Keep him safe and you can do whatever you want with me. Anything. Let Lord Tywine kill me himself, it doesn't matter, she asked, cursing her foolish pride. I should have just gone with him from the start and none of this would be happening. John's face was turning purple now, his eyes bulging furiously in the monster's grasp, and she can only bite back a cry. Lord Tywine can hand me to the mountain's whims for the rest of my days. You cannot give to the gods what you do not have, she thinks. And Ashura had not truly cared what happened to her in nearly a dozen years. A great prayer needed a great sacrifice, and there is only one thing in her heart she truly has left to give. But how can I? She had spent the last 11 years setting it into motion, planning every step. It was justice for her princess, it was all she was alive for. Keep him safe and I. The words stilled in her throat momentarily. I am going to die here, Ashura reminds herself. And I cannot make sure he is safe once I am dead. There is no use for it any longer. I will let the truth die with me, she prayed to the old gods in a quiet plea. I will give it all up and Jon will never know who he is. Nor everything else. Just let him live. Keep him safe. She feared her prayers have fallen on deaf ears until a voice sounds from the door. That's enough, Clegane. It is the Lord of Lannisport who pulls into the view, surrounded by a dozen men, all clad in crimson and gold. By the gods, put the boy down before you kill him. Is it such a tough task that I must specify the word alive? He looked around the blood and gore surrounding them in the cabin and she can see his face paling, not having anticipated the result. Clegane, he repeated forcefully, and the men looked at each other hesitantly before starting to raise their swords. She could detect the slightest hint of panic entering his tone. Ashura's death may be perfectly legally justified, but murdering a son of the Warden of the North without cause was paramount to declaring war. Now, lest Lord Tywine learns of it. For a moment, the knight's lips curled in anger and Ashura was sure he would finish the job, consequences be damned, but with a frustrated growl he threw Jon's limp body aside before storming out violently. It was all she could do to toss herself on top of his tiny frame. He's breathing, she nearly sobbed in relief. Thank the gods, he's still breathing. The next minutes pass as a blur and she can barely keep any attention on the happenings while focusing her energy on Jon waking up. Ben enters with some of the Stark guardsmen carrying off Daisy Mormont, though Ashura cannot be sure at the moment if her friend is still alive or if it is her corpse they are taking to be prepared. When they approach her, they are averting their eyes and she looks down at her ripped clothes and understands why. Embarrassment and mortification creep within her. I need a dress, she finds herself saying weakly. I need a... Before she can even finish, Jory Castle has already unwrapped his furs and laid them over her. Are you hurt, milady? He. What is the meaning of this? Benjen snarled, his wife's blood still coating his hands. He is more furious than Ashura has ever seen before and she could not blame him for any of it. Is this the Lannister hospitality? Slaughtering my men and brutalizing highborn ladies. They were protecting her. Lord Stafford blustered. She is a traitor to the crown, marked for death. If they had just let Sir Gregor do his duty and handed her over, it needn't have happened. It wasn't ideal, but it was fair. He is in over his head, Ashura realized. Lord Stafford Lannister could not control his master's brute, had no answers on how to calm the rapidly escalating situation and had no idea what to do. He had never intended for any of this to go as it had and now he was left scrambling trying to rectify the damage before Lord Tywine could be made aware of the mess. Jon rose from her lap, barely able to keep himself upright. There is no fairness here. Gregor Clegane, he broke off tightly, sparing her a glance before deciding to swallow the words that were at the tip of his tongue to spare her the last of her dignity. He confessed to the rape and murder of Princess Elia Martell right in front of me, Jon claimed after a calming breath. By the king's law, his life is forfeit, yet you just let him walk around freely. That's outrageous, the man spittled, turning red, and she could make out beads of sweat running down his neck. Sir Gregor is an anointed knight in the service of the Warden of the West. The king himself found no evidence of any such acts at the capital and granted a full pardon. These are nothing more than the desperate claims of a traitor at death's door and some child. I am no liar. Jon snapped, full of loathing. And I am certainly no child. I am the Lord of Moat Cailin, the eldest son of Eddard Stark, the Warden of the North, and every bit your equal in standing. I demand he be punished for his crimes, the confession of which I personally attest to, as is the right of the position I hold. And if you do not, you can be assured the princes of Dorne will hear of this great miscarriage of justice. It seemed Stafford Lannister had finally grasped just how precarious his peace was holding. Lord Tywine would undoubtedly be loath to lose his pet beast in that manner, but he would have no choice. Speaking of miscarriages of justice, Ben decided to chime in darkly. I find it rather convenient how you came to learn about Lady Dane's presence not so soon after Jorah Mormont somehow escaped after being taken in your custody. Preposterous! Lord Stafford reddened in anger. I will not stand for these absurd accusations of yours, Stark. Do you think I had my men murdered for that sinful slaver? In fact, I find it rather convenient how Ser Jorah's bonds were loosened enough for him to wield a sword after your men tied him up. I have had it with your deflecting. Benjen shook his head. It is either that or you are the most incompetent lord in existence, Lannister. The complaints and arguments were heating up. He was one of your tree-worshipping savages, she heard a Lannister man say. Coming from the southern cravens who only come out to brutalize old men and maids, a Stark soldier shot back. The tension between the two sides was so thick, that not even Dorne could have cut it. Northern blood had already been spilled here. And every man had seen the state Daisy had been left in when leaving, bleeding out to death. Add to it the frustration of Jorah, the burning shame on them all, escaping right under their noses because of the Lannisters, only added to the fire. Ashura knew men of the North very well. They fought with reckless courage whatever the odds, and right now they wanted blood, not to return home empty-handed. You are free to leave with the boy, Lord Stark. The Lord of Lannisport finally declared dismissively. Lady Dane will be handled. Oh, I will not be going anywhere without Lady Ashura, he snapped. She is under the protection of Lord Eddard Stark and accompanied me at his command. Then you will all die here on this soil trying to break Lord Tywin's justice. Mayhaps, we will, he growled. But first I will make sure you join me. And as my nephew said, do you think Dorne will sit contently on the side when they learn the truth? That the Lannisters knowingly protect the beast that murdered their princess? Lies, he snapped. Nothing but lies, and I will not stand for it. There will be no war. I have thousands of men who will stand by every word I say of what happened here. And how many will you have to do the same by the time we are through? The implied threat in his challenge hung over the room. Of course, she could have laughed if it did not pain her so much. Of course, they could just as likely bury this too with 100 corpses and spin whatever tale they wished. Gods, she was such a fool to think anything would come of that pitiful attempt at seeing Sir Gregor hang. Here in Lord Tywin's own home. It was when she watched Ben clutching the hilt of his sword that Ashura decided she had seen enough. Stop. You promised me, Benjen, she implored him, and he turned to meet her eyes. There was no fighting this, not here. It would only be all their deaths if they tried. And if anyone could shuffle out of it at the end, it would be Tywin Lannister. He was just as likely to somehow shift the blame to Jorah Mormont. Someone trustworthy had to ensure Jon made it back north, or it would all have been for nothing. Benjen finally realized it too, but still he stood rooted to his spot, sword in hand. I asked you to just stay on the ship, Ash, he seethed helplessly. As Ned told you. Why must you be so you? Your brother knows well enough how bad I was at doing that. She managed a shaky smile which he didn't return. His eyes were filled with unshed tears, and she knew how much it was hurting him. Seeing Daisy and now her. She felt the same. He had truly become a brother to her. Ashura did not know what she would have done in Winterfell those early years if he hadn't been there to fill the void that had been left behind by little Illyria. Take Jon back now, she insisted softly. It is all right. Really. This is my choice. I came to get him back to safety, and I did. He turns away, stepping backward stiffly and tucking back the sword into his scabbard. No, what are you doing? Jon turns to him, etched with betrayal. We can't just leave her here. He's turning to the men one by one, growing hysterical, and none of them can manage to look him in the eye. Suddenly he grabbed a sword from God's nowhere and made to stand in front of her. Then I'll do it myself. Why you stay away from her, he warns, but his arm is shaking, whether from the fear or effort she cannot tell. All of you stay away. Jon, put that down, she turns him around, panic clawing at her chest. Now. The simple movement sends the weapon clanging to the floor, and she knows that he is in no state to be holding anything. He is in no state to even be standing. Look at me, please, she implores, watching him shake in place without taking his eyes off the floor. His breathing is labored, and she can tell just by pressing softly against his chest how much pain he must be in. Does it hurt much? You must go back to the ship and see the Maester. My spirit hurts more, he whispers, his eyes angrier than she had ever known them to be. I should have been stronger, then this wouldn't be happening. I should have been better. Somehow she finds herself misliking that expression on his face. Jon had always had such kind eyes, emanating with warmth to friends and strangers alike like flames in the hearth during the coldest winter night. But fires could be raging too, she was reminded, seeing how his violet eyes almost seemed to turn black. They could consume and destroy everything in their path if unleashed, and Ashura had no wish to see that happen on her account. She knew what that helplessness and guilt could do to a person, what it had done to her. "You will be better than me," she thought. "I know you will. Take heart, little one, even the mightiest tree starts as a seed," she soothes, raising his chin. "And you are the strongest person I know in the only way that matters. The gods fashion those they have blessed with great strength to always protect those who were born without it, those who are less fortunate than themselves. That sturdiness they put in your heart to stand up for others no matter the odds, that is the true gift of strength, and it is something that the likes of Gregor Clegane will never understand. Remember it, Jon. You have a beautiful soul, you must never lose that." "I am not strong enough for this, mother." He looks down, and tears are pouring down his cheeks. "They are going to kill you. I see. Can't he take it?" "I can't." His lips tremble. Of course, they were going to kill her. Lord Tywine suffered no personal insult lightly, vindictive and vengeful as he was, and now she had given him the perfect chance to retaliate with no repercussions. He would have the crown's backing in killing her, and not only because of blood ties. A royal command had been given, and no king could be seen to have their word be meaningless whatever outrage it caused. "We do not know what Lord Tywine will do. He may choose to keep me here in the Westerlands," she resisted anyway, cupping his cheek. "But they must do their duty. And you must promise me you will always do yours." "I know. I know it will be hard to stomach at first, but you will rise above it. You always do. Everything will be all right, you will see." "Stop saying that. It's never going to be all right," he bellowed, pressing his face against her dress, sniffling, and she runs her fingers gently through his hair like she would when he was small. The action sent a flurry of warmth through her. "Please, mother, you see, can't he leave me yet?" He shook his head stubbornly, face caked with snot and tears. "You have to be there to see. I'll make a name for myself throughout all the realm one day and become a Great Lord. The Greatest. I'll make you proud, I promise I will. You have to believe me," he begs, racked with desperation. Please just don't leave me." Ashura shuts her eyes, blinking back tears while trying desperately to keep herself composed, unwilling to share the pain she can see radiating from his form. "You've done so well already, my love. So very well. But I couldn't be more proud of you either way," she murmurs, feeling her voice choke up. "And I won't ever leave you or your sister. But no one controls when the gods call on us to join them. I promise no matter how far they take me, you will never be free of me for true. Whenever you feel the sunshine warming your face, you will know it is me holding you in my arms every day." Jon's lip wobbles, and when his face shrivels, she sees he finally seemed to come to terms with what was happening. "You shouldn't have come for me," he whispers, shaking his head in denial, and suddenly sobs are tearing through his slender form. "Why you shouldn't have? I am so sorry, mother, this is all because of me. This is all my fault, it's all my," he weeps, and soon he can do no more than pull at his hair while gasping desperately for breath. Ashura doesn't hesitate even a moment before pulling him into her arms. "You listen to me. I have regretted a great many things in my life, more than you could ever fathom," she told him firmly while wiping tenderly at his runny nose. "But this will never be one of them." If anything, that only seemed to make him shake harder, and she kissed his tears away. "Let go, Jon," she whispered. "You have to let go now." "No," he refused, and she could make out the determination past the tear stains painting his face. "I'm not going to leave you. Never again." "Oh, Jon," she choked out a laugh, looking at him with such fondness through glassy, shining eyes. Gods, when had he ever gotten so stubborn? "He used to never oppose a word," she said. "My lovely boy, what am I to do with you? You can let me stay here with you," he pleaded with her, incessantly. "Tell Uncle Ben to leave without me. Tell them all to go home. But I don't want to go back to Winterfell or Moat Cailin. I don't belong there without you. You always said that I was your home, well, you are mine. Whatever the Lannisters do, we can face it together. Even if they kill us, we will face that together too. All right, she finally murmured hoarsely into his ear with a grin, making him relax. I give you my word. One last falsehood. A kindness, she tells herself, a white lie. You can stay. No matter what happens, it will always be you and me. Together. She gestured silently to Benjen walking up behind them, and this time she truly cannot stop the tear sliding down her cheek. Mama loves you so, so much. Always remember that. She can see his eyes start to scrunch up in confusion, but by the time he understands what is happening it is already too late. And no, he hollered, trying to break free as they pull him away. Stop. Let go of Emmy. Uncle Ben, let go. He's fighting and struggling and sobbing under the many Stark guardsmen, she sees, and his brokenness shatters her heart. Ashura turns away, unable to bear the sight any longer, wiping at her tears hastily and letting the Lannister soldiers lead her away. Notes. This was a tough chapter for me to write, but it sets up something important to the story next chapter, and I will only say that Jon and Ashura will not be separated. Also, as a side note, I figured to help avoid the story from growing too long I would create a separate story where I could write with more depth into characterizations or explore other situations or even practice different writing styles in the form of one-shots. I have a lot of the story written out for a long time where some parts may not fit in anymore, so I will be posting those in that other story called Shadows in the Trees. If any of you guys are interested in some of the world building like in chapter 5 and 7, or just some Stark sibling bonding and moments especially from when they were younger, you might want to check it out. https://archiveoforon.org/works/375462644/chapters/937135339. I know some of you have requested certain one-shots or what-if spin-offs in the past, so feel free to throw out any suggestions that you want to see me write about with really any scenario in the Asoyaf world, and I will certainly try fitting it in when my muse strikes, though I can't promise I will get to them. Chapter 13, of Heroes and Monsters. Notes. See the end of the chapter for notes. Chapter text. Jon Snow. Get off me. Jon screamed, struggling against the pile. Tell them to get off, Jory. The captain of Lord Eddard's guards bent down solemnly. Give me your word you will not run, and I will tell them to let you up, Jon. I won't run, he gave in, and they picked themselves off of him one by one. Chin up, lad. Jory spoke with a look of sympathy. None of it has gone how we envisioned, but Lady Dane will not die here. Lord Benjen has sworn to see to it himself. Lord Stafford does not hold any authority to pass a sentence on her. There will be many talks, and I doubt King Robert or the Lannisters wish to earn the ire of your Lord Father and Dawn over a single noble woman. Jon looked around, and sure enough, his uncle was nowhere to be seen. He must have accompanied Sir Stafford and the other guards who were taking Mother towards his castle. Sounds of commotion explode in the distance, and Jon can see a skirmish erupting between a set of the Mormont men and the Lannisters. Hold, Jory called out cautiously. In the name of the Starks, hold. But it was no use. They could not hear him, and Jon doubted they would have stopped even if they had. No Northman had taken kindly to the escape of Jorah, let alone the condition the heir to Bear Island had been left in. The Mormont's reputation in the north had depended on bringing him into justice, and now the threads were coming undone. Would get the young lord out and back to the ship, as Lord Benjen asked. Jory sighed tiredly, picking a dozen men as his guard. I will see about sorting this mess out. Shouts and cries of alarm ring ahead, and Jon sees a single horseman approaching a dozen strides away. Is he coming to kill Jory or take Jon prisoner? No matter, he thinks. Because I am done with it all. No more. The next he knew, Jon was reeling backward as a horse knocked into him hard. I am falling, is his last thought before everything goes black, the taste of mud and blood filling his mouth as he can hear his world turned upside down in a chaos of clanking swords. When Jon opens his eyes, it is to the first time he'd gone on a hunt in the Wolf's Wood. He and Robb had been 6 years old, and they had gone along with father, trudging deeper and deeper until they had come upon a bear surrounded by a pack of wolves. He could never forget a single expression on that bear's face, that of a cornered beast with nothing to lose, nor the fury and the desperation of its guttural roars. It's terrible, Robb had whispered to him. It is the sound of death. Lord Eddard had informed them. The sound of a dying animal. A sound that Jon could imagine right now raging across Lannisport. The screams of dying men amplified around him, every single footstep blaring in his ear as thunderous as a drum. That was the problem with his dreams, Jon thinks. Even the ones with nice memories. Eventually, whatever the sounds involved spike with more and more volume until the voices show up. The voices, they are just waves splashing at your ears, he repeated Mother's words quietly. So ignore them and swim towards my voice. It had always worked before, even in the worst of nightmares or the best of dreams. He would picture that moment in her voice, imagine swimming into her arms and wake up. But her voice isn't there anymore to guide him. No matter how much he imagines swimming towards her, it's gone just like she is, and Jon doesn't know what to do anymore. He turns his attention back to the memory, trying his best to focus and clear away the haze. Papa, he clung to his father's arm with hushed breath. Why did the bear stop fighting? The wolves are eating him alive and he's not doing anything back. He is exhausted and he wandered too far. That is the way of forests, child. Lord Eddard told him. You run or you fight. If you dawdle in it too long, stray too far from your home, eventually it will catch up with you. Jon felt just like the bear at that moment. He had wandered too far from home and it had gotten him killed. But not just him, he thinks. He had gotten them all killed. All his father's men. Jory, Hwood, Uncle Benjen, and Aunt Daisy. And Mother. The voices echo louder, jumping at him as they distort most painfully, and Jon rubs his temples, making himself as small as possible in the snow. Is this how we are to die? Jon hears someone ask through the noise, and it vibrates in his skull. On our knees. The thought of sitting by himself stuck in another stupid nightmare while his kinsmen die for something he had brought upon them sickens him to the core. I have to do something, anything. But his every bone and muscle ached. And his ribs, they hurt more than any punishment he'd ever endured before. All from a single armored fist by Gregor Clegane. He doubted he could even stand, no matter how much he wanted to. Everything hurt so much that he just wanted to curl into a ball and die. The mountain broke me, Jon thinks. I want what you want, the loudest among them speaks again in a voice that was deep and harsh, almost bestial. I can help us. As much as Jon wants to listen further to the proposal, the ringing in his ears has turned unbearable. I have to leave here, I have to wake up now. Ara Ennis. He hollered, a tear rolling down his cheek. Ra, I need your help now. His brain was vibrating at the noises now and he flung desperately into attempts of scratching and tearing his hearing to stop. He didn't care if he never heard anything again, so long as the noise stopped. Make it stop. Make it stop, he quivered. Stop. The torture of the migraine seemed endless. Jon screamed as loud as he could, hoping to drown the rest out. He wasn't sure if it had been hours or seconds, but nothing seemed to help. He fumbled with a rock, raising them to puncture his eardrums. Wait, the voice hisses, and Jon can hear its desperation. Don't leave. We can take her back. The sharp edge quivers in his hand, dangling momentarily with uncertainty before he drops it. We can save them all if you hold on for only a little longer. That is what you want, is it not? Just like that, everything stopped. Every noise, movement, and thought halted as something materialized behind him. A baby dragon, he realized. It was white as the snow it sat on, staring into his soul with those big, innocent eyes. Hello there, Jon smiled cautiously, allowing it to cuddle against his leg. Did Rhaenys send you to me? What's your name? The beast tilts its head to the side as if judging his person before snuggling back into his form. It was adorable. A memory took him all of a sudden of the simpler times when he would play with his siblings. And of how Arya had insisted that it be a northern dragon in their games. How about I call you Sna? Jon posed wistfully. It means winter in High Valyrian. You could be Winter the dragon. Would you like that? Sna, its voice chirped with acceptance and he could feel the creature's head vibrating with pleasure under his arm. Sna. But its mouth had never opened, he thought befuddled. Did that mean he could somehow hear its thoughts? The dragon climbed up on Jon's lap, licking at the marks decorating his throat, the unspoken question evident in its curious gaze. What are we going to do? I don't know, he admitted reluctantly. I tried to fight him already, but I lost. I am not strong enough. We can beat him, it promises. We can get what is ours back. Together. I can help if you let me. How could you possibly help? Jon furrows his brows. You are just in my head. Let me in, it propositions. Let me take control. I have the strength you lack and you have the powers we need. That sets Jon on alert. It's a trick, he is sure. It wouldn't be the first time. It isn't real, Jon tells himself. None of this is real. The dragons are all dead and they have nothing to do with me. Wake up, he slaps his face insistently. Wake up. They are just voices. But when he opens his eyes, nothing has changed. I am no mere voice, the hatchling puffs up, undoubtedly offended by his claim. You know this is different. I am as real as you are. It is different. Every fiber of Jon's being screams so. This one feels oddly like home, it tingles his insides with warmth. But still. Prove it, he rasped harshly. Tell me why I should trust you, tell me how you are any different. For a moment the beast is silent, molten eyes locked with his own. Because, it finally spoke, I only wish to do what I have already done many times before. Protect us. Suddenly flames danced all around him and Jon found himself watching a memory he hadn't thought of in years. The fire in Winterfell the day the Ironborn had attacked. Jon, he could hear Robb's worried shock amidst Sansa's wails. You are bleeding. Go, he saw his younger self shouting at Robb while wincing in pain. Get Sansa. We have to get out of here. Come on. We'll get Maester Luwin. You'll be alright. Robb had always been stronger than any boy his age had right to be. Jon marveled watching as his brother carried Sansa in one arm while supporting his younger self's entire weight with the other. Jon silently observed himself push his siblings out of the room in the nick of the time as the entrance collapsed, sending burning oak and iron crashing down on his head with a sickening thunk. He scrunched his brows, pacing forward unable to believe what he was seeing. His eyelids had drooped closed as he tumbled to the ground. But as his unconscious body fell, just for a moment his eyes opened, glowing dark as charcoal. And his skin. It was still only his skin, he thought, numb. Human flesh. Yet stacked against each other in the manner it was the flames danced on top of his frame harmlessly. He remembered the wraps Mother had worn over her arms for weeks after coming for him. The burn scars along her arms that to this day marred her otherwise immaculate skin. I should have burned too, he thought dumbly. Every man burns, the Valyrians had been no exception. Not dragons though. Dragons don't burn. More images flash of the same, when the Weeper had struck him unconscious, only for his eyes to glow black for a fraction of a second before he struck back with enough force to cleave his enemy's hand straight off. It was you, he whispered hoarsely, turning to the ivory-colored hatchling at his side. You are the reason my skin didn't burn. You protected us, it finished. And I can do it once more, but not from outside. Not this time, unless you let me in. Jon saw himself falling in Lannisport. Still struck by the horse, eyes closed and knocked out but not having hit the ground. I have to choose, he understands, before my body hits the ground. If I don't, I will still be unconscious and they will all die, but if I do. The dragon had helped him so many times before without him even realizing it, Jon judges silently. That had to count for something. And however unsure he was, he knew there was no other choice. Not really. He had already failed by himself, he needed the help. Whatever the cost, it would be worth it. All right, Jon takes a deep breath, setting his face with determination. I am ready. Benjen Stark. He was no stranger to peculiar sights. He had spent years traveling the north after all, from the sticky bogs of the neck to the frozen magnificence that was the wall, and had been witness to just about every type of engagement and people that could be found. But this was new. One moment he had been assuring Ashura he would return to negotiate her release after seeing Jon safely off, the next he was riding back up to the hill feeling a lingering gaze burning into his back. It started with a dozen, then 2, and soon 100. They didn't move, only stood in fearsome repose atop trees and fences observing his presence as if playing sentry. Suddenly, one flapped across from him cawing loudly, sending the horse buckling nervously under him. "Easy there, girl," he soothed, despite his growing unease. Benjen had always maintained a healthy fear of the birds in the wild. As a boy in Winterfell, he had once witnessed a murder of crows encircling a lamb. Despite the mother's unbending determination in kicking, smashing, and charging at them to protect her young, in the end, they got their prize. They were relentless, bloodthirsty, and calculated in the manner with which they would swoop down maiming and blinding livestock with well-placed strikes to the eyes. Sometimes they could even go after little children, corralling them to flat and empty lots. When the summit finally came into view, he pinched himself, sure he was in a dream. Hundreds upon thousands of glossy blackbirds were flocking before him into a great whirling wind of darkened feathers. The sky itself had been encased into a black wall. A living, rippling, shrieking wall of beaks and claws that seemed to stretch the entire world. "My men," he thinks furiously, urging the horse toward the monstrosity. Of course, every single thing else going to shit on this accursed stop couldn't be enough. Once he is close, his steed pulls up forcefully, unwilling to approach. Benjen unmounts, plunging forward on foot without a single thought. He hadn't thought he could ever find anything more gruesome than he had when fighting in a war. The first crow struck the man beside him as quickly and sharp as Valyrian steel, the deep slash enough to rip his scalp cleanly away. Benjen watched him drop to the ground as heavy as a felled log. Raw, agonizing screams soon rung in his ears, accompanied by panicked neighing. The Lannister horse was running wild, attempting to escape the field for the comparative cover from the trees, trampling their own men in the process and leaving pools of brains and blood decorating the soil. Flashes of black lightning struck the ground, picking off the remaining one by one. He stumbled, panicked, feeling something yanking at his ankle. When he looks down, he realized his foot has been caught in a corpse. Or at least what remained of one. The birds had eaten the rest, he realized nauseously, muscle, fat, and all picked down to the bones. He tugs roughly at his trapped foot, watching as the dark projectiles hurl themselves all around him, plucking eyes from sockets and tearing out men's lips from their faces. Another man falls right under him, wailing as the birds rip chunks of flesh from his cheek and continue to rip apart the rest of his body. This was no dream. It was a nightmare. Lord Benjen, a voice he recognizes, shouts, using a knife to help rip his foot free. "What in seven hells is happening here?" he bellows as they huddle behind a stack of corpses. "I don't know, my lord." Jory rasps. "I don't know what madness this is. But thankfully they don't seem to be bothering us much." He looked over to where the other man gestured, and sure enough, there were the rest of his men, laying down against the dirt in surrender and somehow left untouched. So the birds were only going after the Lannisters. My lord, Jory continues. "We tried getting further inside, but we just can't. Jon was in deeper than any of us." Jon, he breathed out in a strangled breath, panic clawing at his chest. Why was he still here? He was to be taken to the ships. "Never mind, stay here and gather the men if you can," he orders, before the captain of the guards can explain. "I will go get him." Soon he was running, feeling the crows hounding at his back, beaks only half a hand's width from his scalp. "I need to get to Jon before they can kill me," he pushes himself. But then he felt talons grazing at his neck, sending sharp pain lacing through him before they pulled up sharply. They weren't trying to kill him. It was a warning, he realized, watching his blood spilling to the ground as he sank to a knee. A warning not to traverse any further. "I don't have a choice," he thinks, crawling on all fours in the pools of blood muddying the ground under them. Corpses litter the ground, and Ben can make out beak-shredded faces and talons speared in arms and shoulders. Some of the ravens have moved to prance over the remains, gorging on the carnage. Pretty soon he realizes he is only moving in place despite his best efforts, and a glance up ahead is enough to let him know somehow the black feathered bodies are making wind out of the collective beating of their wings. Dust is blowing fiercely into his eyes, leaving him blind to what is in front of him, the cawing and fluttering the only thing his ears can make out. Somehow he pushes inside, clinging to a rock at the edge of the whirlwind. Just as he had, a giant comes crashing beside him. The mountain that rides, he notes, equal parts mesmerized and terrified. Perhaps the most dangerous man in the Seven Kingdoms was sent flying through the air as if he were a rag doll. A dark silhouette emerges from behind him, sauntering through the tumbling plumage, and Benjamin's voice catches in his throat for what feels like the 1000th time in the past hour. Those oh-so-familiar curls were bobbing around his pale face, speckled with dirt and grime. "It is John. How can you forget?" he murmurs, his voice deep and hollow, like the sound of 100 beating wings. The dragon turns away for a moment and somehow the little mice all pretend they are lions and wolves for true. "Why else would you dare to think you could take what is mine with impunity? Somehow it isn't the John he is used to. There is a different air about him, one that screams danger. An edge to his words, a sureness in his step. And his eyes were no longer the gentle and cordial purple he had always known. Now, they were pitch black. He is stalking forward slowly, like a predator on the hunt. Somehow, Sir Gregor has already recovered and lunges for the boy's throat. Benjamin wants to shout a warning, want to run toward him, but he can only remain rooted to where he is, feeling as though he has been frozen in time. John sidesteps long enough to send half a dozen more birds pecking and ripping at the giant with only a slight flick upward of his wrist. A moment later they are on the ground grappling for control in a battle, feral and animal. The birds are still terrorizing Sir Gregor, and soon he is struggling to rise with John pushing down his face into the dirt. "Do you know what even a drop of my blood does to any lesser beast?" John asks, pressing a hand to the wound on the back of his head before slamming it down on the mountain's wound. "It will turn your insides into ash and char, a most agonizing demise." The screams that follow are the most horrifying thing that he has ever heard, as Sir Gregor thrashes in place unable to escape. But it's that dark smile on John's face that sends chill tremors running along his spine. As the mountain finally starts to cease his struggle, John lets out a guttural scream into the sky. That victory alone doesn't seem to be enough to satisfy him. John trembled. "Come back and face your death. Come back." The winds are starting to punish down harder and Ben's grip on the rock he had managed to grab hold of is starting to grow perilously weak. If he had been standing up, he would have already been blown back 50 feet. He is losing control, Ben realizes. He is going to blow us all off the face of the mountain. "John," he shouts, "that's enough. You are too weak to keep this up, you have to stop." But when his nephew turns to look at him there is no recognition in his eyes. In fact, there is nothing in them for him but cool disregard. "You question my capability," he thunders with a dangerous edge, fist clenched. "After I save all your worthless lives." For a moment Benjamin is sure this is how he is going to die. That's when he catches sight of another face approaching right behind them. John, an exhausted voice echoes desperately from behind and he sees Ashura, the right side of her face littered with cuts, laying a hand on his shoulder. "Stop. You have to stop." That contact, he realizes immediately upon making out the tightening of John's face, was a mistake. But before he can cry out a warning, an audible crack of Ashura's fingers alerts him to what has already happened. "Do not ever again presume to touch me in that manner," he seethes, and there are flames of displeasure flickering in his orbs. "Ow! John, it's me," she whimpers, blinking back tears. "If you don't stop, you are going to kill yourself." Please." "Kill himself?" Benjamin blinks, looking closer, and he finally sees what she is seeing. Sallow skin is clinging tightly against the veins bulging in his face. And blood is dripping from his nose, burning so hot it leaves the ground it touches steaming. The boy who no flame had ever been able to touch was boiling himself alive. "Mother." He makes out the throaty whisper, the glow fading from the boy's eyes. And as he turned to look, the sounds of screaming abruptly die, taking with it the dark shadow hanging over them. Benjamin sent his men on ahead to scout what is left of their surroundings before returning to find John still unconscious, oddly peaceful, on Ashura's lap as she had sunk into the dirt. "How did you get here so quickly?" he finally utters once he has caught his breath. "Well, there wasn't really much left to get free from right after you left," she shrugs with a hesitant quirk of her lips. "I took a horse and followed you up. All the men who had accompanied her had been killed that soon. So she had never even reached the castle." The words are so crazy that he could almost laugh. Acres of Lannisport was left a flattened ruin. There were hundreds of corpses for as far as his eyes could see, Lannister soldiers and villagers alike. And Lord Tywine would be arriving on the morrow to find thousands of dead blackbirds littering his grounds to go along with it. How they would manage to get out of this without war he could not imagine. But one problem at a time, he decided. Do you know what that all was? She queried hesitantly. I've seen similar things before, he finally admits. Some of the wildlings around Bear Island could skin change into a single animal, control them. There are tales of old Stark kings who sought bloodlines of wargs so they could control hordes, but I don't know. Something was different. He talked about a dragon. Her brows furrowed, no doubt filled with more questions, but his men had arrived with news from their scouting mission. Lord Benjen Jory spoke. We combed through the entire area. There are a dozen survivors we have rounded up, ones you should take a look at. I imagine reinforcements from the castle will be flooding the place within the hour. Jory is right, he thinks. Time is of the essence. Jory, take 24 men and make sure John and Ashura are headed north immediately in one of our ships. I will handle the rest. Benjen wished his fingers would stop trembling as he made his way to the gathered men. This is all. He couldn't help but ask again. That is all of them, my lord, Hood confirmed. From every inch of every acre, starting from where we found Jorah to where they were holding Lady Dane. The rest are dead. This was all that was left of anyone who could have possibly learned the truth of what had happened. 3 soldiers, 8 common folk and... Well, Lord Lannister, he forced a grin. You are certainly a lucky one, I see. What are you? The man sputtered. Monster. Be beastling. You will be hung for this, you abomination. He thinks I did all this, Ben thinks, not letting the shock through on his face. As he looked around, he realized he was the only one of the men left who hadn't suffered even a scratch. Better me than John. It's best they get as far from the truth as possible. I would be a little more careful in my tone if I were you, sir. He expresses coolly. You see, monsters don't take kindly to insults from little men. That is enough to send Sir Stafford shriveling back. The bumbling fool. What should be done, my lord? Hood asks. Brandon would have never even hesitated, he thinks. He would add the 12 men to the body count and be on his way. Let Lord Tywine and his king try to come north if they wish for more, he would say. Ned, on the other hand, would never condone murdering men who had already surrendered. Would he have just marched back north after sparing them? Either likely meant war. We have to get in front of this, Ashura had said to him before leaving. Set our narrative before the rumors run rampant, however high up that needs to go. Lord Tywine cares about his reputation being kept intact more than the actual lives lost here. The easiest way would be to kill the 12 unarmed prisoners here and spread his own version of what happened. That wouldn't be an issue when he had over 50 of his own armed to the teeth. The thought momentarily sends guilt flickering through him. Most of them were small folk, they had done nothing to kill them over. But they knew. They knew what happened here. Not that it was John perhaps, but how long would it take Lord Tywine to put something together if he heard? And if they fought back, would it be worth the risk of losing any more men? Worse yet, these were their lands. All it would take was one escapee to get them all slaughtered when the truth was revealed. Even if he managed to slaughter them all, who would he blame it on? Jorah. The truth of what had happened was absurd. Lord Tywine was as likely to believe it as he was Grumpkins and Snooks. And why would the rest of the city listen to some Northman? I have to bring Lord Stafford in line, he decided. If I get him to support my story, one which maintains Lord Tywine's image and he spreads the rumors to his people himself, they will keep the peace. Lord Tywine is a practical man, he does not want war. Lord Tywine, the knight stumbled to say. He will have you hung. Will he? Benjen shrugged. When you tell him this ridiculous tale of how you let Ser Jorah escape, picked a fight with northern soldiers, and lost hundreds of his men to some crows. Lord Tywine doesn't seem the kind of man to believe in fairy tales nor to take kindly to decisions from those under him that overstep their authority, which you certainly did more than your fair share of. A brief flicker of hesitation passes through the man's eyes and Benjen knows he could use him despite how little he can trust him. Perhaps you are right though, he continued, making a point of looking at the crows perched above them. Perhaps he will listen to you and he will try. In which case, I deal with him exactly how I dealt with you. You have a son, don't you, Sir Stafford? He reminds the man. and daughters, and a beautiful wife. I would not wish to part a happy family. And I won't. So long as you do exactly what I say, you will go home to them. And if you double-cross me, I will add their corpses with yours and join you all in death, even if it is the last thing I do. You will do well not to forget, the birds are always watching. The man whimpered, frightened to the bone, exactly as Ben had wanted. For all his faults, he will want to keep his family safe more than he seeks Lord Tywin's approval. But that is not enough to count on its own. What do you want? He quivers. All of you here will go spread the word that while Sir Stafford and your forces here at Lannisport worked valiantly with the Northmen to bring Jorah Mormont to justice, he escaped. He escaped because he was a beastling, a savage northern monster, who slaughtered Stark and Lannister alike and made his way east. All of you will proclaim to have seen him use the crows. He had only lost 2 men, both of whose remains had been sent back north. But the bodies of Jorah's dead men would work perfectly well for the deception, already draped in stark grey by his soldiers. Almost 24 Northmen out of 100 would have perished along with all but 3 of the hundreds Lord Stafford had brought. Lord Tywin would never believe it, the Lord of Lannisport interrupted. No, he would not. Benjen agreed. But he will call upon you to explain what happened. You will convince him Sir Jorah realized he was on the verge of capture and made his play for freedom. Tell him the birds were rabid, that they were poisoned by Jorah and his men. It hardly matters to me. But you will convince him, and I will be right beside you to make sure it happens. Lord Tywin will investigate the matter, no doubt, but he will find all his people telling him the same thing. They all heard of him kidnapping the son of the Warden of the North in your hole. After all, is it so much of a stretch to think a traitor turns murderer? A risk, he thinks, to stay here and meet with Lord Tywin. But it's the best path forward. The only path forward. Decide quickly, he warns, knowing reinforcements could be coming soon. If you refuse, you will all die. I will do it, he nods his head shakily. I will do it. It doesn't take much for the other 11 to come around. He frees the small folk, ordering them on what exactly to spread among their brethren. But he has something different in mind for the 3 soldiers. Something that will keep them away during Lord Tywin's arrival, as well as gives them some more leverage. Would he calls out. Bring that parchment over, will you? Your seal, Sir Stafford. He demands, making sure the letter is properly addressed before handing it back over to the older soldier. Would, you will take this and head to King's Landing immediately with 12 men, including Lord Stafford's 3 right here. You will announce the happening exactly as written to Robert Baratheon before returning north along the King's Road. Understood? Aye, my lord. You know what else is forbidden, Sir Stafford, he poses, once they are gone. Lying to a king. You've just sent word with your own personal seal and print of what happened here today to King Robert to be delivered by some of your own men. I imagine he would not be as understanding if the story changed as Lord Tywin would, least of all if the brother of the Warden of the North were harmed in the process. That is his shield, he thinks, light as it is. Between the parchment and the Lord of Lannisport's fear of what he supposedly could do, he had to hope it holds out long enough. Come on then, he forces Sir Stafford up. Let us head back to the comfort of your warm castle. Now it is time to wait for Lord Tywin. Jon Snow. When Jon opens his eyes, there is only a man before him. Silver blonde hair drops down to his shoulders, enclosing a face blessed with long cheekbones and indigo orbs. He was tragically beautiful. There was no other word to describe it. There was an air of melancholy and sorrow surrounding him too, as if he knew his fate was forever to be shrouded in calamity. Rhaegar, a woman whispers, and Jon can make out the concern laced in her strained voice. It is only when he walks up that he sees what has upset her. Must you? There is a babe in the prince's arms, her lips wobbling in protest as blood drips from a prick on her finger onto a bronze stone. No, not a stone, Jon recognizes. A dragon egg. It is tradition. Little Rhaenys is the blood of old Valyria, Elia the man soothes. That is not said for nothing. My ancestors tamed dragons, and one day so will she. Dragons, she raised a brow. That is, quite the dream. They will fly the realm again soon, the prince declares without a doubt. They must. For the long night will come as the prophecy says, and we will all play our part, whatever that requires. So said every Targaryen before you, I am sure, your grace. Princess Elia points out. Yet none succeeded. Perhaps it is time to accept the time of dragons is in the past. They might have failed, but I will not follow in those footsteps. You see, I figured out the secret they had all forgotten, Princess, he claims, the iron tones of his voice ringing warmly across the room. I know how my forebears hatched them. Do you, Roriger? The Dornish woman entertains while sinking back into the bed, and Jon can tell she is used to hearing these casual bits of knowledge from him. There is something about the manner in which the prince speaks, Jon frowns. Something vaguely familiar. Enlighten me. All in good time, he promises, before looking back at the egg with evident frustration and disappointment. What's the matter? Princess Elia frowns. There is more to it, Prince Roriger claims, dropping his head. A puzzle I cannot put together. You see, the Valyrians sacrificed their children, their own blood and kin, for generations as the ultimate offering to awaken the dragon. A soul for a soul. To be able to slip into the beast's very souls as a second life and live alongside their families in this different form. Eventually, they grew close enough to bind the dragons to themselves by blood magic. There is dragon blood running through our veins. An interesting theory indeed, she teases. How many different tomes did my lord husband read to form it? It was only when the princess said so did it click why he had sounded so familiar. Prince Roriger sounded like Jon himself. The notion is slightly unsettling, yet the truth of it resonates with him. How many times had Lya said something of the kind to him when he would bother her with whatever he had read? Yet that is just it, Elia. They say in those days, the bond between a dragon and dragon rider would run so deep that the beast would share his master's loves and hates. It was like the dragon could read and obey their very thoughts. I must do more than bring back a couple of hatchlings to the world. I must bring back the bond we once shared as well. But it makes no sense, how could they possibly have created such a union of beast and man? Just like that, any interest the princess had taken in the topic crashes, and Jon knows exactly why. He knew very well from Mother what the Dornish thought of magic given the lack of their own as well as their embattled history. A bond. Princess Elia snorts with the faintest touch of scorn, pulling little Rhaenys back into her arms. Those are only stories, Roriger. Just like how every Dornish mother used to speak of Northmen turning into wolves and eating their young to scare the children to sleep. A man and beast cannot bond, it is sacrilege to everything it means to be human. And even if you do manage to hatch a dragon as you wish, it will only be an animal like any other. A beast that you must break in, no different than how a stable master must train a horse, if only far more dangerous. What did you say? His eyes fall intently on her as if she had just unearthed all the gold under Casterly Rock. About the Northmen. Only about the stories we would hear on how they would turn into animals and devour babes, she repeated hesitantly. Skin changing and warging and what not. It is all utter nonsense, of course, there is no such thing as magic. They are as human as we are, for all the glory and faults that come with it. Would you come to bed now, my prince, she requests. That is it, he breathes, rising from his place. Of course. How similar it does sound to the skin changing of the Northerners. It does not matter how my ancestors did it, only that we needn't have to rediscover it. Jon hears him murmurs, eyes bright with purpose. Even strengthen it perhaps. Skin changing, that is the secret to recovering the long-lost bond that my ancestors had built with our dragons. Mayhaps it will even be a child of little Rhaenys' womb if we find her the right match. It has long been forbidden, of course, but a strong bloodline of the first men may still have the gift, the Blackwoods, the Starks. Imagine it, Elia, the power they would hold, one of my blood who could speak with a dragon. It would be like nothing we have ever seen. The greatest of us all. It is destiny. Something about the prince's thoughtless manner made Jon's stomach turn. The way he spoke about a possible living, breathing child as if it were only a weapon for his grand prophecy. And what he had planned for his own daughter, like she was nothing but a horse to be bred for the right trays. My prince, would you mind if I rest? It has been a long journey back. Elia asks again, and Jon can tell she is beyond unnerved by the direction of their talk, however much she tries to pretend otherwise. If you will forgive me, I tire of making conversation in my current condition. Of course. Forgive me, my lady. He climbs back in, though it is clear his mind is a world away. I forget myself. When the memory ends, it is only for him to immediately scramble backward and watch the creature before him with bated breath. Gone was the harmless, little creature that had comforted him in Winterfell's snows. Everything about the behemoth before him now screamed danger. A pair of colossal wings extend before him, beating with a hollow boom that sends debris flying around them. The dragon's entire body shimmered like white marble, each of its scales splintering the light like contorted glass. Only the tip of the crests atop its head left the rest of the picture mismatched, stained as blue as the sky. It stepped forward, stabbing down with razor-sharp talons that were nearly the size of him. He had read of how large all the dragons had all been, but seeing one in front of him brought the sudden urge to cower. So the child of fire has finally awoken. Its hot breath bears down on him, heavy enough to taste. Jon finds the sensation more than mildly irritating. Why can I still hear you in my head? Or see you, he groans. Why can't you go back to wherever you were before? Once the water spills into the soil, the dragon posed. Can you fill it back in your broken jug? No. You let us in, it reminded him. So now we will stay. I will watch with your eyes, hear with your ears and offer you my guidance, hatchling. Wait, what? He blurts out horrified. That was not part of our deal. You never mentioned. I don't want you in my head the rest of my life. No. Snow tilted its head. Have I not proven myself useful already? But if that is truly your wish, I shall honor it, at a cost. You must free my body, you must release me. Find me, hatch me, and I shall give you your peace. Hatch you? Jon scowled. How am I supposed to do that when I don't even know where you are? Do you want me to go searching all over the world for the rest of my life for your stupid egg? It could be across the narrow sea for all I know. And why me? Only those of Valyrian blood ever tamed dragons. You know, like houses Barloris, Valerian, Targaryen. I don't have any Valyrian blood. I am half a Stark, half a Dane. I can't do any of that for you. I know not of your human clans, the beast blazoned. They mean nothing to me. But you, I sense myself in you. That is the reason I can live within your body. So get me a body of my own and I will be free to leave yours. One little favor and now the stupid reptile was holding him hostage, trying to get itself a body. Even if I could help you, why should I? You tricked me, Jon judged harshly. You came to me all silent and cute like a baby dragon and now look at you, all monstrous and beastly. Admit what you did. Yes, it finally rumbled with the mildest hint of self-reproach. I suppose I did approach you at your lowest. I came to you in a different form and I did not mention what would happen after, knowing you would agree in your desperation. Can you blame me? After how long I have attempted to speak with you to no avail. So all these years, he wondered. In my nightmares, that was you causing them. I do not control what is in your dreams, it denied. That was your doing. They merely gave me voice, so I spoke. The voices, then Jon mutters. Those were because of you trying to talk to me. And the only way you could reach me before now was through my dreams. It made sense. Jon had never actually had to stay long enough to listen to them before. How did you change what you looked like? He asked with a huff. At least tell me what really happened this time. I have yet to be born in your mortal plane, the dragon decided to lay the truth bare. Until that moment arrives, I can see all that they have remembered, all of my kind who have ever flown your world. I can live in you without time or space taking a hold of me. The explanation was so brilliantly simple it forced Jon to pause in consideration. The dragon had not been born yet, so it had the flexibility of all its future selves. That's why it had been able to show up as either a hatchling or a grown dragon. That was why Rhaenys could change how she had looked at Will too. She had never been able to explain it to his satisfaction like Snow just had. Jon could feel himself growing a little excited despite his better judgment. Perhaps, this wouldn't be so bad. The knowledge of an entire species that no longer existed was at his fingertips. How they had lived, what they thought about or liked. Things not even the most decorated Maestas or Dragon Lords in history had ever figured out. It would be. Please, please, spare us. Each death rewound itself in his mind, forcing him to relive the end of the lives that the dragon had claimed. It leaves him reeling. Men, women, and even children are being slaughtered by the dozens. I have never killed anyone before. I never. What did you do? Jon asked, distraught. Why would you do that? He could still feel the splatter of warm blood as if it were raining down on him, see the organs dropping out of fresh wounds the crows had sliced through, and suddenly he felt like heaving everything he'd last eaten. Oh, that poor freckled girl, he thinks, seeing her neck torn apart, the tendon and muscle hanging to the severed head by a thread, listening to their screams of anguish. Second-hand guilt chilled over him like a bucket of snow. It was one thing to watch his father pass justice on a man with a single, clean slice of his sword, but quite another to do it himself, and in such a manner, he'd discovered. I killed them, he whispered, feeling the wind get knocked out of him. They could have had families set to mourn them. Fathers, mothers, brothers, sisters, sons, and daughters would feel the pain and loss for the rest of their lives. The thought made his hands shake. All of them. You wanted her free. The dragon pointed out nonchalantly, and Jon sensed almost a genuine confusion. As if killing all those people had only been a minor inconvenience in achieving the goal. They are all free. You didn't have to be that brutal, he protested, voice quivering with fury and horror. Those were villagers that we killed. They were innocent people, no one was armed. They didn't do anything to us. And the soldiers had to die, yes, but most of them were just doing their duty and following what they had been ordered. Even if we killed them, they still deserved more respect. You could have found another way. Would you have us grovel? It leaped forward into his face, nostrils flaring angrily. Were we to beg them? They who thought themselves our equal. They who are mere insects, vermin in our presence. We gave them all that they deserved. What? He asked dumbly. We have slumbered too long, Sna bemoaned. They forget their place. Once they had known. Once we had shown them. Vigor. Meraxes. Balerion. The field of fire, Jon remembered from his lessons. The only time Igarnai and his sisters had unleashed all three of their dragons at once in the battle to devastating effect. The three had wiped out 4,000 men within the hour, leading to the surrender of Loren the Last and the wiping out of King Mern's entire line. They are weak, they are nothing. We are a dragon. It is time they remember. It is time they once more fear the wrath of our kind. The little mice thought they could play with us. Now they learned otherwise, it finished with a content hum. A small taste of our true power. If only we were in our true form, if only we were in my body. That was really it. Jon felt immeasurable disappointment. One human life or 100, they were all equally meaningless to the dragon. It hadn't cared one bit for anyone it had saved or killed. You only made an example out of them because you could. For the sake of your wounded pride, because they would not cower before you as you expected. That is barbaric. That is the price of power, the dragon snapped defensively. Tell me, do you cry for every ant you step on? For their families. So why must I? This is our way. The strongest are always right, and the lesser know their place. We took what we wanted and they should have accepted the judgment of their better. But they quarreled with us, so they paid for their foolishness in blood. It is different, he wanted to say. But was it really? Was he not only saying that because he was one of them, because he was a human too? The way of dragons, it dawned on Jon. To them, humans were nothing more than ants under a boot. And from what Sna said, they lived in a hierarchy where the strongest simply imposed their will on the others. And it was just accepted among them that the mightiest was always right. And if another dragon disagreed, they fought to the death or surrendered to claim the strongest place. It all seemed a little too savage and primitive for his tastes, but it made him understand as well. Sna had wanted the villagers to submit with everyone else. To show him the proper respect and subservience. In its mind, when they hadn't obeyed, they had resisted. Well, I am not this, he protested, trembling in anger. You are a monster. Why, you are no better than Gregor Clegane. I am going to be a knight one day, the sword of the morning. We are no knight, it thunders. The only difference between us is I can admit the truth. Tell me, what purpose did you pick up your little metal tooth for? A sword. So I can protect the innocent, he insists. So I can protect people, not hurt them just because they are too weak to help themselves. You reek of falsehood, the dragon murmurs, a glint of judgment in its eyes. I am in your blood as you are in mine, you cannot lie to me. I only did what we wanted to do. What we wanted to fight for. He remembers every tumble he has ever been in, from throwing stones at the older boys who would pick on Hodder when he was a child to pummeling the mountain's face, and at that moment John knows the truth he has been trying desperately to run away from. The feelings of helplessness, anger, and injustice that had burned in him for weeks. I wanted to hurt him. He finally admitted. I wanted to make them suffer. They were trying to take her away from Emmy, and she is mine. She is my mother and they. He stumbles over the words. And I fight, because I hate bullies. It feels good to strike back, he confessed. It makes me feel good to stop them. The real difference between us is I wouldn't have killed all those innocent people. I have to wake up now, John tells himself. I have to. He stops abruptly, seeing his image mirroring back at him. Only this John had glowing violet eyes contracting into slits and a dark smile just like the one that he had seen slaughter all those people. He raises a hand and John knows what is coming next. Don't, he wants to say. But it is too late. A crow materializes out of nowhere, bursting right through him. Suddenly John falls to his knees, unable to breathe anymore. Is this how they all felt in their final moments? An endless sea of red surrounds him, growing as bodies start to drop around him. He can taste the blood on the tip of his tongue, and feel it starting to fill his lungs. No, he wants to cry out. No, help. Ashura Dane. John, she shook his shoulder urgently. Wake up. I can't breathe, he gasped forward, violet eyes strumming with panic. Mama, the blood. I'm drowning in their blood. I see, can't he breathe? Calm down. It was just a nightmare, she soothed, stroking his head gently. And your ribs are broken, my sweet. That is why it is hurting you to breathe. I am afraid it will take moons more for that to heal, but you are safe. We are on a ship now and going back to Winterfell. They sat together in silence for a moment as he seemed to gather his bearings. What happened to you? He finally asked with a frown, lightly tracing the scar across her forehead with concern. Did they do that when they took you away? He doesn't know, she realized with disbelief. He really wasn't in control of any of it. What's the last thing you remember? She asked quietly. I don't know, he winced, holding up a hand to his head. It is all so foggy. They were trying to take you away from me and I just wanted it to stop. He pauses for a moment, deliberating what to say. No. I wanted them to die. I wanted to kill them all and get you back, he admitted, staring at the floor. And dead they all were. Are you all right, darling? She asked, noticing his face waxen. I'm fine. He murmured. He wasn't fine, she realized rapidly, and her face softened. It was only when she placed an arm on his shoulder that she could feel him shaking underneath her. Ashura had no idea how to comfort him. What life had she ever taken to know how he felt? She had never even dreamed of wielding the kind of power he had shown either. But the trauma and guilt of it was evident enough on his face. She wished Ned were here. He would know exactly what to say. I'll tell him to talk to John about it, she promised. No, you are not, she whispered, gently reaching for his cheek. I see that clearly enough, tell me what is ailing you. Something happened, he bit his lip. Something's different and you are not going to believe me. Tell me anyway, she pressed softly. There's a dragon in my head, mother. He admitted, looking at his feet. I can still hear it in my head and it is not going to go away. It wants me to help it get a body. Ashura's mind flashed back to the violet dragon egg she had once helped Ned hide in the very same crypts. Could it really be true? No, she told herself, that's impossible. She had held the egg in her hand, remembering how it had been frozen and cold to the touch. There was nothing alive about it. And the very notion was absurd. No one in living memory had ever seen a dragon breathe. and every Targaryen since the last had died had tried in various ways to bring them back with an almost maniacal urgency, drawn by some dream of purpose. The only thing they all ever met was a grisly end, like moths being pulled to a flame, and she would be damned if she ever let Jon share that fate. "Remember what we talked about doing when you hear those voices in your dreams," she stressed gently. "You ought not to pay any attention to them, nothing good ever comes of it." "I know, but it is not like that, this one was different." "This?" He trailed off with a frown. "You never answered my question," he pointed out, looking up in sudden remembrance. "Who did that to you?" "It doesn't matter anymore." She shook her head. "I want to hear more about what happened." "It matters to me," he interrupted, unwilling to drop the matter, anger flaring. "Whoever it is, they need to pay for it." "The mountain," she filled in smoothly. "In the cabin, remember. And I think he has more than paid for it." "You are lying." He refuted falteringly. "You didn't have that before, I know you didn't." "Jon, I don't want to." "It was me, wasn't it?" he spoke despondently. "I was the one who hurt you, just like I did to all the others." "You would never hurt me," she refuted with a comforting smile, "you saved my life." "You shouldn't be here," he directed, pulling away from her grip. "You shouldn't come near me." "I am perfectly fine and it was an accident, Jon, that is all." "I know you didn't mean to." She pointed out firmly. "You weren't trying to hurt me. I could tell. It was like swatting a fly, an annoyance, nothing more." His eye twitched and somehow she had made it worse. "Go away," he shook his head, growing increasingly frantic. "Now. I want to be left alone. You saved your Uncle Benjen's and Aunt Daisy and all your father's men's lives as well. Not one of them was harmed, and that is all because of you. 97 of them will all go back to their families because of what you did here." "I said, leave." He warned in interruption, deadly calm, and for the barest of moments, his eyes flickered with tendrils of black. Ashura's voice caught in her throat and she barely suppressed the shudder threatening to overtake her, but she stayed where she was, sliding her hands carefully up either side of his. "I am not going anywhere," she promised, massaging his fingers within her palm. "Whatever is happening, we will get through this together, just like we got through the dreams, and the voices and everything else. All right." His lips quivered with barely suppressed relief and she wrapped him in her embrace, holding him comfortingly against her bosom. "I am sorry. I don't understand what's happening." "Not any of it." He looked up at her in a plea. "What's wrong with me? Tell me why I am." He trailed off with hesitation. "Why am I such a freak?" She remembered a little boy crying to her once with the same expression, and the idea that he might be thinking something similar right now absolutely shattered her heart. "I need to tell him the truth now, that is enough to make her decision." Jon had always been sensitive about being different for as long as she could remember. This was her chance to finally explain everything. The voices, the nightmares, the magic. She could set his mind at ease. "And this is it," she emboldened herself. "What you had been waiting for." It had always been part of the plan, telling him the truth after his 11th name day. Old enough to understand, she repeated the justification in her head once more, yet young enough for it to not hurt him as much. Time healed all wounds after all, and if she told him now, he could take all the time he needed to discover who he really was. To learn of his heritage and forebears if he wished to do so, and grow accustomed to the parts of him he had never been able to know. And she could have never asked for a better opportunity to bring it up, even if she had tried to create it herself. He would finally know of the responsibility that awaited him, the kingdom that would one day be his to rule. "Jon, there's something I've been meaning to tell you, for a while now," she started slowly. "About, well, the reason all these things are happening to you and what it means for you." "Really?" His violet eyes scrunched back to her with equal parts curiosity and confusion. "What is it?" You are." But her mind couldn't focus enough for the words to come out. "Let him live," she'd pleaded with the old gods, "and I will let the truth die with me." An empty promise, she realizes bitterly. She had thought she had meant it at the time, but that had been when she was sure she was going to die. Perhaps it would have been better if she had. The gods had kept up their end of the bargain, but she knew she would never truly be able to keep hers. She would happily pay for that sin when the time came, but Jon's safe now, she tells herself, he is safe and that is all that matters. More than that, she kept thinking back to that Bear Island guard who had spilled the truth of everything that had happened. Of Lord Jorah's debts, his slaving, and his encounter with Jon. He had known doing so would cost him his life and he'd done it anyway, all because of the Stark name. Because Jon was Ned's son. If not for that, she didn't even wish to think about what could have happened. Might she have just given up Jon for dead, thinking he had been mauled by a bear in a cave while he was somewhere across the narrow sea a slave? The idea made her ill. Even if the North might support Jon as their king, she didn't wish to do so like this anymore, by splintering the kingdom and undermining Ned's authority. Paying that respect back was the least she could do in return. Ned would never take up arms against Jon even if he would not fight for him, and she could work with that. A neutral North would make things hard, sure, but not impossible. And Jon's safety had to be her first priority. A secret didn't stay a secret long when given even a spark of a chance to spread. She remembered how insistently Ned had forbidden Benjen from letting Dacey know the truth, making him swear before a weirwood to protect the knowledge. She had thought him overbearing and ridiculous on the matter for years, yet now. Dacey loved Jon, she'd die for him, but Ashura could hardly imagine what would have happened if Jorah had somehow learned the truth through her. He may as well have headed straight to King's Landing exchanging a royal pardon for Jon's life. And he was too trusting for his own good as it was. What if she told him and Jon entrusted someone with the truth that couldn't be trusted? A prince of a deposed dynasty. There would be too many waiting in the shadows ready with a knife for his back. Not yet, she swallowed the decision. Let Ned Stark's name protect him until he's ready. I'll tell him only once I finally get him all the support he needs. Once I know he will be safe. You are special, Jon, she told him instead. Everything that you can do, it is a gift from the gods and one day you will help so many people with it. Uncle Ben said he has seen it before, that you skin changed into those birds. I skin changed into the dragon, he corrected under his breath in a soft yet unyielding tone. And the dragon, it used the birds. I think I made a mistake and bonded with the dragon somehow. But there's one thing I don't get. Where could it have even come from? It is not alive. Mayhaps it was Princess Rhaenys. The words stumbled out of her mouth before she could stop herself. The idea seemed to have caught him off guard and he mulled over it silently. Ashura felt hot all of a sudden, having no clue why she had said that. Lies upon lies. She knew very little of how their odd connection worked, but how else could she possibly connect his dreams to a dragon without revealing the truth? A dragon that she wasn't even sure was real. For the first time in her life, she had no idea what Jon was thinking. She watched nervously as he continued looking forward with murky eyes, his face devoid of even a single expression. That makes a lot of sense, he finally claimed, giving her a little smile. I saw this, memory of Prince Rhaegar and Rhaenys. He was talking about bonding with a dragon using skin changing. He was dripping her blood inside a bronze dragon egg and arranging her a match. It must have been hers. I asked Rhaenys for guidance and she must have connected us somehow. She had the blood of the dragon and she knew I could skin change into it and understand it, so she helped. That's why she helps me, isn't it? Because Princess Elia was your best friend and I am your son. He peered into her eyes so trustingly that Ashura had to turn away. For the first time, she felt undeserving of the stars in his eyes. Rhaenys was always a helpful little girl, Ashura admitted instead. Sweet. I am sorry, he lowered his eyes regretfully. About Princess Elia. She deserved better than that. Do you think Lord Tywine will be punished by the king? The Mountain confessed before I killed him, didn't he? So everyone should know the truth about it now. I think not, she shrugged, despite how heavy it ached. He only confessed because I was there, and well, your uncle must have come to an understanding, so it is as if I was never there in the first place. So it is like none of it ever happened at all. His face grew stony at the realization. She could still write to Prince Oberyn and tell him of the Mountain, she thinks, even if she spares him the details. He would hate that his revenge had been stolen, but at least the mystery of who had done the deed would no longer bother him. Jon, she asked quietly. About what did happen, do you think we can maybe keep that between the two of us? You want me to lie? He wonders hesitantly. I will let your father know about the parts that matter in private. But you mustn't tell anyone else about what you did. And you mustn't use it in front of others again. Can I just tell Lia? He checked in with her, almost pleadingly. The two of them had always shared everything as far back as Ashura could remember, and she was certain that hadn't changed in Bear Island. I will make sure she doesn't tell anyone else, I swear I will. I just think she will understand, I think she could help me. No. Not even Lia, she echoed regretfully. But if you want to talk about it, you can always come to me. Or Ned, or even Uncle Ben, if you would prefer. I guess so. He bit his lip indecisively. Just tell him the truth, Benjen had told her. The only reason he stopped up there, the only reason he was able to control it, was because he trusts you. That is why we are all still alive and not a red splatter along the hillside. What do you think will happen if he finds out you have been lying to him? I am lying to him because I love him, she had shot back. I am trying to protect him. He is just a boy. He doesn't need all of this right now. It is just for the best, John, she voiced. People are afraid of things they don't understand. And skin changing has been forbidden for hundreds of years, and the penalty, if you were blamed, would be the noose. I think your uncle has got it under control this time, but it will be difficult to keep quiet the more people know. So that is why we must be careful. Until we can learn to control this, it is best we just push it down. Just suppress it. I know you can do that. You trust me? She asked slowly. Do you not? I do, he nodded. I didn't mean to hurt anyone else. I didn't mean to kill those villagers. I just wanted to help. I know you did. She brushed his cheek gently, and you did help. You saved us. But if I am being truthful, it was a little scary too. She confessed quietly. You were scared of me. He looked at the ground. Scared for you, she corrected, wondering how to explain it. John, you almost killed yourself, you know. It was all I could think about watching you lie here the past 2 weeks. I kept picturing you on that hill, so angry and filled with so much pain and rage, and it hurt me seeing you like that. I won't do it again. I promise, he announced evenly, closing his eyes. I won't let the dragon out, no matter what. Is everyone truly all right? Even Aunt Daisy? Every single one of them. And Daisy will live, Ashura assured. An arm less for the wear, but she is alive. They sat beside each other in relaxed silence for a moment. You don't suppose we might have some Valyrian blood, do you? He posed abruptly, and she nearly gaped at him. We. It is just, I have been thinking about it, and well, wouldn't it have been easier to bond to the dragon, even with skin changing, if there was even a drop of dragon's blood in me? I know the entire lineage of the Starks, and they only ever descend from the first men, he continued. House Dane does too, but there were 20 families of dragon lords in Valyria, like House Baelaris. Some escaped after the Doom, and Starfall is closer. Maybe some descendants married into House Dane long after the dragons died. It would explain a lot, right? I mean, our eyes and hair are so different than usual first men's houses. The boy is too smart for his good and too curious. I'm not sure, she settled on. It is an interesting theory. Even if there were, they likely would not have gone by any Valyrian name, or might have joined with other houses generations down. It would need a lot of research. But I know they keep a book of House Dane's entire lineage in Starfall. I saw it once when I was young. When you visit Dawn sometime, you could check it out. She reached back and dug out a little collection of notes she had prepared on the likeliest candidates they could draw allies from. I've made this for you over the past 2 years, she smiled lightly, laying it in his hands. Moat Cailin is ready, and we will have to move in and settle matters, but after that, you will want to build alliances in the south, trade deals, and the like. So I've written up some houses for you to visit, who they are, what to know about them, and what to say. You will still need to book appointments with them, of course, and prepare a retinue to accompany you. She was interrupted by John suddenly launching himself into her lap. I'm sorry. I've just missed you so much, Mother, he confessed in her arms with a grin, as they lay down in the bed. You are the best. She felt a warmth run through her as she dropped the book, instead snuggling further into his embrace. I nearly just lost him. Let me have him to myself a little longer, she thought selfishly. before I must share him with Lyanna Stark. Ned Stark. Something had happened. He had known that much when the letter had come from Seaguard, vague and informing him they would be arriving soon, weeks later than they should have been if leaving from Lannisport. What he didn't expect was Ashura to return in the state she had, and no matter how well she had attempted to cover it he could make out the fading blackened eye and the scars littering the right side of her face. "Who did this?" he asked, pressing a gentle hand to her chin for a better look. "Who did this to you? And where is Ben? He was supposed to take care of this." "It was my fault," she interrupted. "I made some mistakes." But Ben was still back in Lannisport meeting with Lord Tywine. "Lord Tywine? What?" "Ned," she implored, gesturing to the boy beside her. "I will tell you everything, later." "Jon," he dropped beside his son with relief. "It gladdens me to see you, safe." Well had been his first choice, but it was not exactly a word he would use to describe Jon's current condition. Somehow he managed to come out looking worse than Ashura. The strangle markings decorating his neck stood out first, but based on how he stood alone he seemed to have broken ribs and a crushed wrist among various other injuries. "Go home," he instructed softly. "Let the Maester examine you and rest." "Not yet," the boy turned away. "I wished to take their bones back myself, father. All of them. They came there for me, I wanted to tell the families myself. They all deserve that much, and, well, there's one last one." Ned nodded with understanding. Too young, he thought with sorrow, to be carrying that burden. Yet Jon carried it well. He could imagine how hard each one must have been for him in Bear Island and now in Wintertown. Meeting with fathers and mothers, sisters and brothers, and telling them their loved ones were gone. Yet, he never once balked at the task. This one though, he knew, was going to be the hardest. "Desmond watched over me for as long as I can remember. He was the best protector I could have asked for, but he was more than that. He was my FFR." Jon's voice finally choked up. Ned knew how close his son had grown to the guardsman. He felt his heart grow heavy as well, remembering all the times little Arya had come down with Ashura to spend with the elderly couple. Desmond had been their only child, their sole pride and joy. The finest swordsman in all of Winterfell. "You honor us, little lord," she gave him a comforting smile, though her eyes never once left the cart. "No." Jon lowered his eyes, voice filled with grief. "It was him who honored me and I'm sorry. I'm so sorry I couldn't bring Jorah Mormont to justice as he deserved and that your son's murderer walks unpunished. I'm sorry he was taken away from you for my sake. The gods bless me always." She smiled, and Ned did not know how anyone could have that much strength. "I am an old woman, milord. I do not have many years longer in this world and now I know I will see my boy sooner than I could have ever hoped. Still, he died for me. I wish I could change it, I wish," he broke off, taking a deep breath. "Though I cannot, I promise I won't let his sacrifice be in vain. I will honor his memory and try to be as worthy a man as he saw in me. And Moat Cailin will always be welcome to you and yours if you wish it, but even if you do not and there is ever anything you need my assistance with, I swear you will have it. There is only one thing I wish from you, milord," she said, handing him a parchment. "That you read this." Jon's eyes flickered with surprise as he grabbed the letter with a shaky hand. "It says he asked your permission to leave Winterfell's service." Jon turned back, looking at him for confirmation and a tear finally broke free of its resistance and made its way down the boy's cheek. "That he wanted to be the first to join my guard. I knew my son." She shook her head, cupping the boy's cheek. "He never felt more alive than when he was serving you. He knew the risks but he never regretted a moment because he saw something in you. That is why the only thing I would ask of you, milord, is that you do not hold back. That you finally let that flame inside you free. Let it fill your heart and burn bright." "I will," Jon swore, a genuine smile finally imbuing itself on his expression. "I promise." "Thank you, Des, for everything," he whispered, hand on the edge of the cart, before hiking back towards Winterfell. "He is a credit to you, my lord, my lady," the man told him and Ashura, and they watched as Jon's back faded from over the hill. "May the gods forever watch over and bless him." He acknowledged as his and Ashura's eyes met. "That he is." Jon's no. The words of Desmond's parents had taken a weight off him he hadn't known he had been burdened with. He hadn't known what reception to expect in Bear Island either. But when he had returned to Mormont Keep after meeting the families, it had been clear that Aunt Daisy had spread word of what had happened. Lyra had even come forward to kiss him on the cheek. "Thanks, John," she had whispered. Jory and most of the other Stark and Mormont men had come to see him in the ship after he had woken. A blessing from the old gods, they had called what he had done, claiming they owed him their lives. He knew others were wary of him though, even if Uncle Ben had sworn them all to silence, warning he would take tongues if the truth spread. John doesn't know if it made him a hero or a monster, but at the moment, he is too exhausted to care. What he does know is the world is filled with cruel beasts. Beasts who harm others and feel no remorse, monsters who kill for pleasure and think it is all some game and they will not stop unless someone makes them pay. I was born for the purpose of hunting down every last one, and I will do whatever it takes to fulfill that, he thinks. And if I am unable, then I will die trying. In 1,000 years, they will all still talk about me, and so they will all remember you too, Des. I will find Jorah as well. I will hunt him down like the pathetic, viperous snake he is and get you the justice you deserve. John wondered where the traitor had run off to and what he would do. Certainly, no one could deny his skill with a sword. He might join a group of sellswords, maybe even the Golden Company. How am I supposed to get to him then? A sliver of doubt sneaks into his mind. When he is protected by an army. Let him run, Sna smoldered. One day the little mouse will have to crawl out of whichever hole he has found to hide in. And whatever comes our way, whatever allies he finds, we can crush them all. John wants to stay angry at the dragon. Wants to blame it for its deception and all it had done. But in the end, they had both gotten what they wanted. Even if the dragon had taken advantage of him, he had had no way of saving the lives he had without it. John had needed them alive, needed the dragon's help just as much as it had needed him. It may have been too prideful to admit it, but John could sense how desperate the beast had been to join with him. The way of the dragon was all it knew, how could John have expected anything else? But I can change that. I can show him what it means to be human. The image flashed so clearly in John's head then. Jorah flung in the air only to come down as a mangled corpse splattered between a dozen razor-sharp teeth inside a pair of ivory jaws. One day, I am going to kill him. I will rip him limb by limb and devour him whole. No, John resists. No. No, John confirms, perfectly settled. I don't need your help in dealing with Jorah. I will do that on my own. This is my body, not yours. For all your talk of strength, I am in control here and you will never come out again. But you can watch. You will see what it is to be human, to be among the ants you don't care for, and you will learn. Perhaps, you can even advise me. But if you ever try to trick me again, John warns, I will find a way to rid you of my head and send you back where you came. I am done being made a fool of, by anyone. No more tricks, Sna promises, seemingly impressed. So, the hatchling has a roar after all. Suddenly someone tackled him to the ground. John! Lyra shrieked, jumping on top of him and peppering his face with kisses. You are here. You are really back. Does that mean you got my twin message? Twin message? He thought dumbly before coughing up blood, pain pulsing through his form. You are hurt, I am sorry. She backed away, wide-eyed. I didn't know. He surprised her by swallowing her up into a crushing hug, ignoring how much the act hurt. I missed you so much, Lyra. More than you know. I thought I wasn't going to see you again. Well, I didn't. She smiled before standing up. You did promise. An outstretched hand dropped in front of him and John took it without a thought. You look like seven hells, Snow. His brother shook his head, the snow melting into his auburn hair. Tell me you at least gave it right back to whoever it was. His eyes darkened briefly. I suppose you could say that. Well, I shouldn't be surprised. That is classic John. Robb grinned. Playing the hero as usual. Leave him be, Robb. Songs are fussed. He makes a great knight in shining armor as it happens. John, a squeal came from his side and before he knew it his little sister was hanging on his back. You are finally here. You didn't respond to my last letter, stupid. Arya chastised from around his neck, failing miserably at concealing her excitement. I had the best news ever. He wondered, lips quirked. And what was that? Well, you know how you are leaving for Moat Cailin soon and we will be visiting you there, she continued rapidly. Aunt Ash had asked father and he agreed. He said I can come to stay with you and Lia, for a year at least, but I know I can convince him to let me stay longer after. I finally get to come live with you both. It was surprising, Jon thought. Father had barely liked letting him and Lia go to Bear Island and he knew Lady Catelyn would certainly be no supporter of this plan, however he had managed to appease her. I am glad, he told her. We will have a great time. And I will keep you as safe as you would be in Winterfell. Something about this moment surrounded by his siblings felt indescribably perfect. It felt like home. And now you have met all of my family, he tells the dragon. Don't you think that would be nice to have? They could be yours too. We have no family, Sna rumbles lowly, and Jon almost thinks he is grumpy. We are the last. You are a tough nut to crack, he finds himself laughing for the first time in weeks. But I will get you to see. We have all the time in the world. Notes. Here is chapter 13. As always, I appreciate every one of you who interact with this story and love hearing your opinions, so let me know what you think. Chapter 14, Crossroads. Chapter text. Hey everyone. I did add a small chapter at the end, but this is more a quick note than anything else. I wanted to give you all an update on the direction of the story and a general timeline, so bear with me for a little longer as I am hoping to get a pulse from all of you on how you would like to see the story proceed and which of the following parts pique your interest the most. As I have mentioned a couple of times in previous notes, the next arc is about 7 to 12 chapters which encompass developing Moat Cailin. Jon at this point in the story is still fairly idealistic, which is completely normal since he is only 11. So we will look into how he approaches ruling, what he does when he is actually forced to make hard decisions, his attempts at improving Moat Cailin both structurally and economically, and how that might clash with Benjen and Ashura, who have differing goals / experiences. He will have his fair share of struggles initially, but this is also where he will eventually learn to play the game and understand how to operate and control things in the background as well as keep his lords in check. A lot of this will focus on building characters who didn't have a big part to play in canon, Nym Sand and Lyra Mormont, or OCs based on canon, Osric Umber, Garrison Fowler, which I know is sometimes not to everyone's taste. But on the whole, it is going to feature significant character development, especially for Jon, Lia, and Arya. The second arc will probably be between 8 to 15 chapters and is primarily about Jon and Lia traveling the Seven Kingdoms and Essos starting about when they turn 13, officially so that Jon can form trade deals and gain allies, but it is also them just having fun and some light-hearted experiences they make through various parts of the world. As of now, I have written about Jon meeting the Mallisters, Brackens, Blackwoods, and Dare in the Riverlands, then Golden Grove, Highgarden, and the Arbor in the Reach. From then they will go to Essos and spend time in Lys, Volantis, the Summer Isles, Tioche, Myr, Pentos, and Bravos, and finally all the major players in Dorne. I have a specific interaction already in mind for each of these and how that will affect things in the future, but feel free to drop suggestions if there are any others you want to see. Jon will end up making his fair share of friends and enemies along the way because making waves is how Jon is going to roll. There will be a good amount of world building here, specific festivals in Essos for instance, but especially the lore of House Dane as we get to Starfall and High Hermitage because I've always loved those. The last arc starts pretty much right once Jon returns from Starfall just after his 16th birthday to Winterfell around the start of the event that triggered the canon story, the death of Jon Arryn. This is where most of the plot is going to actually move forward at a strong pace. I am guessing there are about 30 to 40 chapters of content here. We will have Jon and Robb's conflicts with Joffrey, Jon's emotional confrontation with Ashura and Ned after learning the truth of who he is, which by the way I just finished and think might be the best piece of literature I've ever written, and the continuation / fallout on from there, which will diverge a decent amount from canon but following a similar premise. Which brings us to what I was talking about. So initially when I had thought up the idea for this story, it was set along what changes in the original timeline would come about, primarily stemming from the scenario where Jon has already been established as a powerful lord. So I had a plan on giving some backstory, which we just finally wrapped up now, and then having a time skip ahead to the events of canon while supplementing that with flashbacks of things happening in arcs 1 and 2. But now that I've already written out a lot of Moat Cailin and the journey arcs, I thought I would leave it up to you all instead. Eventually, everything I have talked about above will end up being published, if not here then as a one-shot on my other story, so it is not so much a question of anything being left out, but more when and what you want to see here specifically, as I try to maintain a coherent flow for the story and avoid bogging it down with too much. Right now, I am tentatively considering jumping around to the relevant parts of the traveling, since I know a lot of you are here for the Jon Margaery action before jumping ahead to the start of canon. But I am pretty much open to anything at this point, so just let me know which of the three or combination of them interests you the most. If you have any specific questions that might help sway your opinion, feel free to ask and I will be happy to answer in the comments. Anyways, thanks for reading my entire mini blurb if you made it down here, and go ahead and enjoy a short transition chapter. Doctor 25. 294 AC at Moat Cailin. Jon Snow. Oh, thank the gods, at least we have a real castle lie side beside him with palpable relief. I was sure you were going to end up as the lord of nothing but a dozen horses and sheep. But I suppose it sort of fits, doesn't it? The rest of this place is as gloomy, grey, and muted as you usually are. She japed, throwing a teasing elbow against his chest. His twin wasn't fully wrong. Moat Cailin was the most magnificent castle Jon had ever laid eyes on, and he'd seen every one of them in the north. Not even Winterfell could compare. It glimmered dark from the sunlight shining against the obsidian walls. And with the red Mirish carpet furnishing the interior, it sat there lofty and regal, like the abode of a king. Somehow the grandeur felt out of place after all the struggles he had seen from his people throughout the day while riding here. For now, he acknowledged silently, but not even the truth of his sister's words could dim his spirits. But not for long. Because what Jon pictured was so much more. I will make this place the greatest port in the realm. A center of commerce, arts, and higher learning. I will help them all. Hey Arya, his twin called out. First one inside gets the first choice of rooms. What do you say? I say have fun sleeping in the stables, Lyak. Arya laughed, galloping on ahead. You are not going to beat me, little sister. Lya sang before urging her own horse forward. Not even with a head start. Jon let his sisters race down toward the castle, dropping back and slowing to a trot instead to keep his mother company. Where were you earlier, when you rode away with your uncle? She welcomed him with a smile. You took longer than I thought you would to rejoin us. There was a man who wished to fell a tree from our land to help build a hall. I was held back helping him. You will set tongues wagging, mingling with the common folk. Mother warned curtly. It is not as it used to be. Now it is best if they come to the castle to speak with you, whatever their requests. But if you must, always show your generosity to the masses, not selected people. I suppose he agreed slowly. But you are making it out to be a bigger deal than it was. It was just one little stop on the way, helping one of his people. What was the harm? He invited you to share food with his family after, did he not? She asked casually, and Jon's eyes snapped up to look at her. How could she have known that? But I don't see. Then next, he will wield you as a weapon, she interrupted knowingly. People would have seen, eyes will always follow you from now on. So he will tell everyone of what close friends you are. Perhaps to get a better deal for his wood, perhaps to intimidate his neighbor in an argument, but one day he will, and it is you they will look at with resentment, however small. Unless he paid far more handsomely for those trees than I imagine he did, I'd wager it wasn't worth it. Jon didn't know what to say to that. Only that it left a bitter taste in his mouth. Now that you are a lord, you must remember, she cautioned delicately, everyone wants something of you. From the commoners who will turn to you for protection and full bellies to the nobles who wish for power and wealth. If you wish to truly maintain charge of them, you must sniff out each one of their intentions. Ruling men takes more than brawn, little one, it requires guile and cunning. If you are to understand how to navigate these lords, you must always stay one step ahead of them, you must understand their angles. Men are hardly ever as straightforward as you need them to be. John rushed to take all the information in, and he couldn't help but note it was so much more complicated than it had ever seemed. "What is ailing you, my love?" she asked, seeming to sense how discouraged he was. "I don't know if I can," he turned away. "It all just comes to you so naturally. I could never be that good." "That is no cause for fret," she laughed. "Believe me, you are leagues better at it than I ever was at your age." "Somehow, I find that hard to believe," he replied, almost sure it was just a ploy to encourage him. "Well, it is true," she chided lightly, eyes seeming far away. "I was a fish out of the water at court. I didn't know what to say to who or when to keep my mouth shut, and I caused the princess far too much embarrassment. I wouldn't have lasted a fortnight in that rat's nest if it wasn't for her. But I suppose even I learned after enough hard lessons." "What do you mean by hard lessons?" he wondered. She blinked at him twice before waving the question off. "Never you mind. All that matters is I am here to teach you. And the rest will come with experience." Her eyes shined bright with an idea as she turned to him. "Hey, how about we practice a little right now? Let's take the Mormonts, for example. Can you tell me why they are here?" "Because they are family. Uncle Benjamin and Aunt Daisy came to help me," he told her with surety. "And the Mormonts came with her." "That is true," she allowed. "Your aunt and uncle love you dearly, only a fool would question it, and they no doubt wish to help you establish yourself, but is that all? Lady Mage sent her younger daughter Lyra into your service with 150 Bear Islanders, no insignificant number for a house as impoverished as they are." John gave it some thought. Lady Mage had sent Lyra to claim and settle one of the offered parcels of land at Moat Cailin along the western coast, and John had been ecstatic at the news. But why? Of course, Lyra would have wanted to. She was his closest and dearest friend from Bear Island, and Lady Mage would want her to be happy. Many of the men and women that had joined her had volunteered to do so, people he had grown to know and respect, and people who knew and respected him from the duration of his stay with the Mormonts. And the Mormonts were poor, as Mother had said. She had 5 daughters but controlled only modest lands. If trade picked up in Moat Cailin as envisioned, it would make a better living for Lyra than Lady Mage could likely get for her anywhere else. Lands, wealth, and a secure position in the north. Not to mention, she had her older sister Daisy right here as Master of Arms at Moat Cailin to smooth things along and keep her company. Just as he was about to tell Mother so, he stopped himself. He had a feeling that wasn't what she was getting at. I'm not sure," he admitted quietly. "All right, think of it another way." "Why you? Why now?" Mother posed. "Of course, they all know and love you well, and Lyra and you are great friends. But even if you weren't, I don't doubt Lady Mage would make the same decision." "What do they want?" Suddenly, it all clicked into place, and John felt like an idiot for not picking up on it sooner. The events with Jorah had served to grow his reputation in the north on a scale John had never dreamed, spreading a tale of his dutiful and brave attempt at protecting his foster family's honor. But it had not been nearly as propitious to the inhabitants of Bear Island. Despite the Mormonts universally praising him for his actions, it ate at John still what he had cost them. As bad as the slaving was, his intervention had made it all that much worse. Not simply a slight on Lord Eddard's honor, but an attempt to kidnap a son of their rightful Lord Paramount, who had entrusted them with the most sacred duty of caring for his children in his stead, and then spilling the blood of a Northman who rose in defense of his lord. The Mormonts, they wished to regain their soiled reputation and status in the eyes of the North after Jorah dishonored them. So they wished to serve a son of Ned Stark, prove their loyalty to House Stark, and earn their trust once more. Very good, she smiled proudly. So you see, the Mormonts have fully intertwined their fates with your success. You can likely count on their loyalty most of all. How about the Umbers? Lord John Umber had sent his third son, Osric, and an astounding retinue of 300 men to claim and settle given lands along Moat Cailin. He wasn't cut from quite as impressive a figure as his father or older brothers, but he towered over most men all the same. And despite his young age, even at 9 and 10, he had already proven himself to be one of the best warriors in all the North. The great Jon liked me. John started thoughtfully. No doubt he wished to grow closer to House Stark as well, but they were already perhaps father's most ardent and loyal bannerman. His son would get lands and a chance to build his own reputation separate from the last hearth, but there had to be more. Come on, think, he urged himself. You can put it together yourself. John racked his mind over everything he could remember from any interactions he had with them before a relevant piece of information floated through his mind. Osric had specifically requested lands along the east, John recalled. Why? It was the western ports that were currently getting heavy and wealthy of the Old Town trade deal. That was the only southern trade agreement that he had managed to make so far. The Umbers were also one of the staunchest believers of the old gods, the most traditional and culturally northern houses along with the Karstarks. He thought back to the generous dealing Lord Umber had cut with him for Umberwood, willing to place a riskier bet on John rather than follow the current situation he had in place with the Mandaealis. He doesn't like the Mandaealis. Their gods or customs or knights. John finally said. He knows I follow the old gods. He hopes if his son controls a port to rival White Harbor, he will have influence in the north that the Mandaealis currently monopolize. Better dealings to the last half than they currently got, no doubt, but a heavier northern presence and attitude to counteract the Mandaealis' southern ways. She hummed in agreement. I believe you are right. They could be your fiercest supporters if you are able to draw them in. Mother was right. But they could also prove troublesome if he could not, John figured to himself. He knew from dealing with the Great Yon how set in their ways Umbers could be. How would they react to the Dornishmen pouring in next to them who followed the Seven? They didn't believe women should fight either, something the Mormonts would no doubt abominable. Speaking of the Dornishmen. Mother, he cut in. I know the men from House Dane are coming for you. I know why the small folk come from all over Dorne, but why have the Fowlers come to claim land here? Did you know them? It is Lord Franklin's own brother, Lord Garrison, that is coming to claim the eastern lands with his heir. And one of his daughters, Jenlyn, is joining them. Mother recalled out loud. They are a powerful family. And Aaron always said Lord Franklin was as shrewd and influential as any man in the kingdoms. But you can be assured the Fowlers did not come for any love they hold for me. What do you mean? Dornish politics, that's an old story to say the least, Mother sighed tiredly. Well, you know of House Dane's history. It is true, on occasion we banded together against the Marcher Lords, but Fowler and Dane have hated each other for thousands of years, as is the way with rival kings. Apart from the Urinwoods, we were the most powerful houses in Dorne at the time. After Princess Nymeria united the kingdoms under Martell rule, we worked hand in hand with them for hundreds of years. I know all of that already, John piped in. Princess Nymeria married Sir Davos Dane, the Sword of the Morning. And I've read about the Dornish Targaryen wars and how House Dane was one of the Martell's closest advisors. Well, do you know why my father kept sending me to visit the water gardens when I was a girl? Mother seemed to hesitate for a moment. It was to bring the Danes back into good graces of House Martell. There had been a falling out of sorts when my grandfather was Lord of Starfall, and of course, the Fowlers used the chance to push ahead and grow closer to the Martells. What was the falling out about? He frowned. I am not sure, I didn't much care then. Mother shrugged. Aaron would probably know, but what mattered was that my father promised I would serve as one of Princess Elia's ladies-in-waiting. He was making a bet that I would close the rift. I was so young then that I had no idea what was happening. Elia adored me from the moment we met. She took me under her wing without hesitation and treated me like the little sister she had never had. I always loved her for that. And well, my father's plan seemed to work, for a time. The Princess of Dorne was close friends with Queen Rolla, and it was through Elia's recommendation to her mother that Arthur became a part of the Kingsguard when he was only 8 and 10. And by the time we learned she would be Queen of the Seven Kingdoms one day, she trusted no one more than me. But then she was gone. And without her, House Dane's influence with the Martells must have dwindled relative to the Fowlers. What happened after? John asked, curious to learn more. Prince Doran, he is not a trusting man by nature. And after the rebellion, Prince Oberyn was furious at Arthur. That he hadn't stayed back in the capital to protect Elia, that he hadn't joined the fight at the Trident where Prince Luwin Martell was slaughtered, that he was in D. She cut off sharply and John wondered what she had been about to say. Well, you get the idea. That's not fair, he judged instead, indignant on Sir Arthur's behalf. Uncle Arthur just did his duty. He shouldn't be blamed for it. And I thought Prince Oberyn was supposed to be your friend. Prince Oberyn is my friend, she smiled. But he was always hot-headed as well. It took him years to get over that. After everything that had happened, Arryn closed off Starfall and High Hermitage, and little Ned and Ally stayed at home far away from Sunspear. From what I have heard, Oberyn and Doran's daughters are rather well acquainted with the Fowler girls. And there have been rumors that Nymeria Sand is journeying to Moat Cailin with them. One of Prince Oberyn's bastard daughters, Jon recalled. One of the infamous Sand Snakes. But she had never requested to come and settle lands. How long would she really stay without it? She is the key, Jon thinks. If House Martell was closer to the Fowlers now, and if the Fowlers were playing some kind of game, Nymeria Sand was the Martell's ears and voice. If the Danes and Fowlers feuded, she would be the piece that would relay that to Sunspear and bring the pressure of the Martells down on him, the force of all of Dorne to try and force his hand and decisions. The idea alone burns furiously in his chest, and Jon can feel the dragon beginning to stir. Moat Cailin is mine, he thinks. Not the Starks, not the Martells, nor anyone else's. No one controls me. I have to get Nymeria Sand to my side. I need her to put her trust in me instead of the Fowlers or the Martells, as impossible as that would seem. There's something I don't understand. You are a hero in Dorne, he reminds Mother. Everyone in the country loves you. Why would Prince Doran not trust you? Why would he not want to get closer to you for that alone? A hero is great for the commoners to find purpose, but why do you think Prince Doran would want his people rallying behind anyone else? The Dornish crave for action, and Doran is certainly not a man of that, she tells him, a slight smile playing on her lips. What do you think he feels watching his people, from various parts of Dorne, leaving together and going to another kingdom? If I were him, I would think it is dangerous too. He might just find me threatening. Do you think they will try to hurt you? Jon wonders out loud. Of course not, she laughed. Those are not Doran's kind of games. But whatever this one is, I don't doubt they are here out of their own interests. Which are what? He wondered. I suppose we will have to wait and find out, she replied. Chapter 15, The Sword of Justice. Notes. See the end of the chapter for notes. Chapter text. Hey guys. Just finished watching yesterday's House of the Dragon episode, and it inspired me to churn this out at the same time. It has been a while since I read about the Dance of the Dragons, but I like what they have done with the show so far. If any of you have checked it out, do you have any thoughts? Also, I appreciate all the feedback I got last chapter on what you all wanted to see. In the end, I decided to go with a shorter version of the Moat Cailin arc, followed by jumping forward to the canon timeline and exploring those changes. I will include snippets of their travels when relevant to the main story, but mostly will look to put those as one-shots here if you guys are interested. https://archive-over-own.org/works/3754626/chapters/937135339. Anyways, now we are on to the chapter. Moat Cailin circa 297 AC. A mapping of Jon's kingdom for your reference. There are still many significant parcels of lands that have not yet been handed out, but I've roughly broken it down into the territories relevant at this stage in the story. The Central Red District is directly under Jon's jurisdiction and obviously houses the actual castle of Moat Cailin. Area is primarily made up of Stark/Dane men. The Purple District on the east is settled by the Umbers, while the Orange along the west is primarily Dornish inhabitants, with the Fowlers acting as vassal lords. The green is the Bear Islanders under Lyra Mormont, and the light blue are the natives of the area. 295 AC. Jon Snow. Hardly a week into the routine of his duties as Lord of Moat Cailin, Jon found the role leaving him with more disarray than he had anticipated, particularly when it came to listening and judging the concerns of the small folk whose troubles mostly involved land or coin. Today alone, he had received more requests than he could count on his fingers over disputes between landowners or creditors coming in to extract every copper from their destitute and often elderly tenants and borrowers. More often than not, Jon's sympathies found themselves with whom he considered the victims, ones he could make out after a single glance at the predatory contracts that they had signed. Jon had advocated first for forgiving the interest on the debt and later lending them the needed coin, yet both had been quickly shut down by Benjen Stark. Interfere by forgiving debt and the wealthy will stop lending, his uncle had warned. Lend coin yourself and Moat Caillin's coffers will empty quicker than you can blink. Unfair as it seemed, in the end he did as his uncle urged, nothing. He would simply sit in his grand seat, unable to even meet their eyes for the shame of it, while offering the borrowers empty words encouraging them to find work, or on occasion reworking the terms of the agreement to ensure that the amount could be more easily paid. The next case to be judged was allowed inside, and John's eyes flickered with growing interest to the scene before him as a northerner approached, dragging a young boy by the scruff of his neck. This promised to be different, at least, he thought. This street rat tried to steal my fruit, the man claimed, pushing the child to the front. The law says his hand be taken, my lord. I ask for your leave to carry it out. John understood the farmer's frustration well. He had seen the state of the few crop fields in his lands on the ride to the castle after all. With the thin and rocky soil, these lands were not fit for farming, and most of the time they would have to be grateful for whatever they could manage to pull from the dirt. Dealing with thieves upon all that must have proven infuriating. But this one is just a child, John thought. A boy of Bran's age. Perhaps this once he can be granted clemency, John suggested, considering his youth. He has thrice already, my lord, the farmer spittled, shaking in anger. Yet he comes to steal from me again. It's in his blood. The boy's rotten, a practiced thief. These Dornish, they are all nothing but liars and thieves, they have no place here. John tactfully chose to ignore the charged words, focusing instead on the decision in front of him. In his blood. John misliked the notion, but he could see the truth of it as well. If the boy had not learned his lesson after being caught all these times, he could not be let go without consequence. Justice demands he be punished, he admitted grudgingly. And hadn't John sworn to always carry out justice no matter what? Bring him forward, the order stalled on the tip of John's tongue. And I will take his arm. An arm seemed such a heavy price for a bushel of apples. Would he finally turn to the captain of his guard? Escort him to the dungeons. I wish to have him questioned further before I pass my judgment on his punishment. In the meanwhile, let him reflect on how he erred. The farmer did not look pleased, but he said nothing either. Yet disgruntled murmuring still resounded through his hall once more at the inaction, and John could practically feel the disapproving stare of his uncle burning a hole into the back of his head. That will be all for today, he declared, rising from his seat. The questioning of the frightened boy in the jails had yielded very little of value. Only a single name, which they had quickly uncovered to be the area which the boy had been brought from, an area that John had saddled up to check out for himself. The journey from the farmer's home was longer and more treacherous than he had ever thought it could be, thanks to the sudden shifts into the unstable and rocky ground they were forced to look out for. The pitfalls were a death trap waiting to happen to anyone who didn't know the layout of the hills, John thought to himself. How desperate could a thief be to have made this trip multiple times? When he arrived in the town, the reality is worse than anything his mind could have conjured. The crumbling homes are barely propped up by wood, and the stench of a pigsty and sickness permeated the air. He could see children peeking through corners, making out their hollow cheeks and cracked lips. What is this? He rasped. A slum, my lord. There are others just like this one across the north, across every inner province in the realm. Wood replied, a sympathetic expression on his face. I would put coin they get far worse in the south. Worse. That upset John more than he cared to show. Living in Bear Island after growing up in the lavish halls of Winterfell had felt like the step down in seeing the harshest of what the realm had to offer. He felt like the child he was, finally realizing how little he had known about all that surrounded him. Where are their parents? He demanded to know. How can they let children suffer like this? Orphans likelier than not, Lord. Do you know who moves first onto new territory, and one run by a boy lord at that? The guardsman continued, clearly seeing the confusion in his eyes. The lawless, the cruel, outlaws. Criminals looking for a clean start and easy picking grounds. People who had the most to fear and lose, but look at you and see the scales shift in their favor. So they will probe the ground and test their limits until you show them your mettle. These children's parents were likely slain by whatever criminal group has been ascending in this territory. They had no one, John thought, an ache filling his heart. No, he amended silently, they have me. Being a lord is like being a father, Lord Eddard had told him once. Except you have thousands of children and you worry about all of them. The farmers plowing the fields are yours to protect. The women scrubbing the floors, yours to protect. The soldiers you order into battle, yours to protect. And these men were his. They had poured into this land by the hundreds because they had believed in him, at the very least they had believed they would have a better life than where they had come from, and it was his duty to ensure that he gave them that chance. John strode towards them and watched as all but one scattered into the shadows. The remaining boy quavered momentarily, readying to flee, but in the end, stood in place. John supposed his curiosity had won over his fright. The child was shivering, wrapped in a threadbare coat, his elbows poking through large holes in the sleeves. They did not know a northern winter, he thought. Half of the number would likely be dead when it eventually came. In a moment of kindness, John slipped off his own cloak and draped it around the boy's shoulders. "Hello there," he said, putting an extra layer of friendliness in his smile. "What's your name?" The boy took a guarded moment, sizing them up before looking to the merchant's stand across from them. "Bread?" he asked in a whispered cough. "How much?" John walked to ask the merchant, scrummaging his pockets for whatever coin he had on his person. "For a loaf." "6 coppers, Lord," the man asked, and he was sure he had misheard. "Half a dozen coppers," he exclaimed with disbelief. "For a single loaf? That's an outrage. It must cost a penny at most." "You've seen the path up, my lord." "No one but me wishes to take it," he protested weakly. "And Lord Fowler's cut alone is a groat as it is." John wished to argue further, yet instead handed him the pouch with all the copper he had. "Then ensure you continue to do so." "Feed them?" he asks. "However long the coin lasts." "Pardon the interruption, Lord," his captain of the guard urged. "But we best not stay long. It is unwise for you to be alone in these parts without numbers. These men can be dangerous." "Dangerous?" John thinks, a sudden wave of fury buzzing loudly in his ears. "Well, they are not the only ones." He can feel the dragon stirring in the back of his head, and the prospect is beyond tempting. John is unsure if he is angrier at the outlaws, the state of his kingdom, or worst of all, himself. This week of having to face the people who were hurt the most by the struggles around them, turning them away even while feeling as if he wasn't doing what he could had proven infuriating. What John was sure of, however, was that taking the boy's hand would be a miscarriage of justice. He had undoubtedly been left starving. Of course he'd try to steal food even knowing the consequences. That was the nature of any man. Laws held no meaning when they were left so desperately worried for life itself. As he often did in times of confusion, John recalled the words of Sir Arthur Dane as narrated by his mother. "What if something feels wrong?" John had asked her once during their lessons, "but it is what justice demands. How do I know what to do?" "Justice is like a sword," she had relayed the words of the greatest knight Starfall had ever known. "And the sword of justice is not truly just if it is not tempered by mercy. Too little justice and too much mercy and you will fail to keep an edge," he had warned. But too much justice and too little mercy and the blade will turn brittle and crack. Only you can discover that balance for yourself. And John knew at that moment what he wanted to be done. "You are right, it is not safe here. Let's go home," he tells Hwood after a calm breath. "Take as many men as you need when we return and see that this matter is taken care of. Have this copied and passed out to the readers," John ordered. "They are to head to every corner of Moat Cailin and announce my words at once for all to hear." "As you ask, my lord." The scribe nodded before exiting the room right as his uncle walked in. "You have been busy." Benjen Stark looked back. "What was that all about?" "I have decided on how to punish the boy that I had jailed and the others like him." We should talk about that." "You should have just taken the boy's hand," his uncle berated. "The punishment for thieving is as established as the Stark's rule. You cannot fill the jails forever, and there have already been grumblings about your generous rulings. You cannot afford to show too much pity when they come to you for justice, John." "It was not pity, and chopping off his fingers certainly is no justice," John retorted. "It is mindless revenge. Justice is giving people what they deserve. The farmer deserves recompense for his stolen fruits. The people of Moat Cailin deserve recompense for the balance in fairness that was disturbed by his actions. How will chopping off his hand do that for anyone?" True justice is him serving Moat Cailin till his debt is repaid, which is exactly what I intend. When John looked up from his rant, his uncle had fallen silent with shock. Well, I suppose I walked into that one. He shook his head, hiding a grin. I should know better by now than to try winning a debate with you. So what have you decided to do? Well, he begins. That is what I just sent out to be announced, the changes that will be implemented as Moat Cailin's new justice. My justice. Your justice. His uncle's eyebrow threatened to pop out of his head. As you know, here, it is my word that is law, and I have already had a few plans in mind that I wish to enact, he confirmed. To start with, I have never seen much purpose to sentences of maimings or beatings. The murderers, rapists, and traitors among others will still get the usual choice of the sword or the black. But no more cutting off fingers for a stolen bushel of apples or whipping people through the streets. It is just a waste of able-bodied men. Men I need if I am ever to transform my kingdom into what I know it can be. If they are to truly pay off their debt to Moat Cailin, there must be restitution. Therefore, those who are guilty of lesser infractions will be made to serve a sentence of public service for a fixed duration depending on the nature of their crime that I have detailed. Something tells me you have been pondering this idea for a while, he comments dryly. And I'd wager you already have the first project of public service in mind. I do, John grinned sheepishly. I am going to have roads constructed to connect our new port along the northwest end of the Bight out to the Fever River. Look, he continued, leaning in against the sprawled-out map. There is no single kingdom apart from mine that stretches from coast to coast, at least in a manner that can be traversed. If Lord Mallister wishes for firewood from Bravos today, he must have a ship sail all the way under dawn, or if by land, through the Blue Fork, paying tolls for each kingdom he crosses. Houses free, route, Dare, and Mouton. That is my edge. If I join the Salt Spear to the Bight, I can transport goods overland between them and all along the western coast from Bear Island to Lannisport cheaper and faster than anyone else. I can connect both northern coasts for trade with an ease that no one has ever before imagined. Roads on this terrain. That is an endeavor far beyond what a few petty criminals can ever hope to accomplish. Even if we brought experienced masons to build it alongside them, it would take years and thousands of gold dragons, an undertaking that would be unwise even in the best of times. I know, he nodded, taking the chance to reveal the rest of his plan. Which is why it will not be them alone. I am announcing the beginning of public programs of relief for the peasantry in times of hardship. Moat Cailin will fund anyone willing to work on the roads to the tune of 7 coppers, as well as ensure that they are well fed during those efforts. That's quite a lot of thought. Well, you get credit for some of it. Remember the book you bought me for my 10th name day? A Road of Kings. It was the tome with all the thoughts and observations of King Jaehaerys on his decision to construct the King's Road. That is where I borrowed the idea, he announced excitedly. So, what do you think? That I don't know what Ned was thinking, Uncle Ben replied after a moment of silence. Letting a boy as green as you govern. He tried to hide his hurt at the words, knowing there had been no real malice behind them. Both Mother and Uncle Ben had volunteered to take over as regent until he was of age, as was the custom, but John had wanted no part of it. Before Lord Eddard could make a final decision, he had made his case to his father on why he should be an exception. He had pointed out the uniqueness of the situation, how the Dornishmen and the Northerners would need a figure they could both relate to, among half a dozen other reasons why he should be allowed to rule for true despite his youth. The Lord of Winterfell hadn't waved him off or dismissed the suggestion out of hand like John had thought he might. Instead, he had listened patiently to the pitch, and once John had finished, Lord Eddard had proceeded to look him in the eye more serious than John had ever seen him before, and asked him a single question. Surprisingly enough, his answer had proved enough for Lord Eddard to agree, despite every one of his advisors surely advising and pressuring him against it. Neither Mother nor Uncle Ben had openly said so, but John had a feeling neither had taken being passed over very well. You misunderstand me, child. His uncle's eyes softened. I am not angry, truly. I only wish to protect you. You have a gifted mind. Perhaps the most gifted I have ever seen, but your heart will get the best of you yet. The law may seem ruthless to you now, but it is the justice of your father, of my father before that, and every Stark for a reason. It shields you. From what? John frowned. From judgment he explained easily. Trying to determine each man's fate from their unique circumstances, give that enough time and it will wear you down like rain on a mountain. This boy may have had no choice, maybe he will work as you expect and redeem himself. But that is no guarantee for the next one. Maybe he will steal because he can again and again until you do decide to take his hand. What do you think people will whisper then? Of how their boy lord has won justice for some of his subjects and a completely different one for another. It is what they will say, right or wrong. His uncle says, making out the outrage on his face. Keep the law as is, John. Let it protect you. Because this road gets far rockier before it straightens out, and it is your life that will be easier for it, not mine. Easier at the cost of distancing myself from true justice. I do not fear carrying the scars my duty brings, John tells him. I would rather bear the strain of that choice than abide by something I do not believe in. True justice. Benjamin Stark laughs. While your father was in the Vale and your uncle Brandon was fostering in Barrowtown, I was in Winterfell at Lord Ricard's side. I know what it took for him to rule, and there was nothing true or just about it. You can never escape making those choices, he warns. Every action you will ever take will help someone and hurt another. Whether that is taxing half your lands heavier to support the other half, or knowing you sent some men to their deaths while holding the others in reserve. Ruling in this land means being hard, more often than not it means being heartless. However much you wish it to be neither. We can never become what we want by remaining what we are. He offers contrarily, I am not a child, I know every change will have its discomforts. I know it will be hard, but I believe with all my heart Moat Cailin will be better for my action in the end. You think honeyed words will solve all your problems? His uncle shakes his head, walking away. I have traveled the north longer than you have been alive, and let me tell you I have seen projects of every nature attempted before. Do you think you are the first to have grand ideas of change or progress? And I will tell you something else. None of them have succeeded. The north is a harsh mistress, pup. She squashes dreams like yours faster than you can imagine. Perhaps you are right that things should be different. But they are not. And you will find yourself wishing you kept the law as is. Mother, he greeted, making out who had finally slipped into his chambers. It was the first he had seen of her since the morning. Busy day. Like you would not believe, she smiled tiredly, making herself comfortable next to him. John imagined he could. As the lady of the house, Mother had thankfully taken full oversight of the daily running of the castle and managing the new household staff from the cooks down to the maidservants. It was an interesting group, to say the least, combining young northerners looking for opportunity with elderly Dornishmen from Starfall who she had managed to coax out of retirement. Additionally, John knew she personally handled the education of the girls. Not only that of his sisters but the other young noble girls in Moat Cailin as well. That number of foster daughters included his close friend Lyra Mormont and Elia Sand, one of Prince Oberyn's young daughters who John had been surprised to see accompany her older sister. You are having quite the day yourself if rumor is to be believed, Lady Ashura mentioned nonchalantly. Changing laws, creating public programs, ordering the construction of roads. I suppose so. He sighed, knowing what was coming next. They are wonderful ideas, she acknowledged steadily. Quite thoughtful of you, truly. Making work out of nothing. But, John prompted, making her roll her eyes. But I just wonder if now isn't the best time for such large-scale changes, she continued. I mean, the roads, are they really necessary right at this moment? You have been lord for less than a fortnight, and sooner than later, it promises to be a lean winter. I know of the north well enough, he returned, not caring to be lectured about the home he had spent his entire life growing up in. It's a cold and hard land, and when winter comes, it will need a lord who puts their needs above his own. And when the winds blow colder, she asked sharply. When your half-built roads fill with snow and the men cannot work, will you keep paying them for nothing? What you give, you cannot take back without being called a tyrant. As if he had never considered all that, John thought with a scowl. I don't have a choice. His frustration bubbles over as he spills in vivid detail exactly what he saw on the day. About the boy and the merchant and the outlaws and all else that was causing him grief. The people out there are struggling, Mother, my people. He implores her to see. They are poor. Hungry. They need my help, Is that all? She tilted her head. You do not need action so drastic to fix a problem so small. Sending the household guards to deal with the outlaws is a good start. We can host Lord Fowler and discuss with him why an adjustment to the rates he is selling to his merchants might prove beneficial to all parties. He will have reason to come to a compromise, I am sure, once he realizes how that might just prove a lucrative opportunity. Once we get him on board and the additional trade deals start coming in, the problem will take care of itself. John had to confess, that did not sound half bad as a solution for lowering the price of goods in the inner provinces. It held little risk and would accomplish much of the same a lot sooner. But the idea of roads, while a riskier option, had always intrigued him. The King's Road was the only major overland route in the Seven Kingdoms, and as it approached the neck it became a causeway that finally winded down past his own castle, the only true entrance from the southern kingdoms to the north. The toll made decent enough coin from those looking to pass onwards, and the single path made Moat Cailin the most formidable defensive stronghold in the realm against invaders. But whenever John laid eyes on the structure, he envisioned far more than the relic from over 200 years past that others were content to keep as is. He saw the opportunity of the future. It had always bothered him how complacent the Northerners were to stay disconnected, how they could reside within their local towns their entire lives. The chance to build proper roads that expanded on the idea of the King's Road and connect the entire region together was a dream he could not pass up. That was the way to break down the walls of isolation that enveloped them, to join the Caingom together more than they ever had been in the past. The easier it was to traverse, the more appealing the land would appear to artists, singers and travelers alike. He could expand trade, better their defenses and make the North truly great. John could imagine that imprint on the entire realm in the same manner one day joining every major landmark for people to enjoy. If only he could get her to see Moat Cailin the way he did. The roads will do more than just lower prices, Mother. I am trying to keep the peace and these efforts will aid me, he revealed in a further effort to convince her. The Dornishmen and Northerners get along about as well as oil and water. Do you think I haven't heard the bickering and snide remarks from Lord and commoners alike? If I want to bring Moat Cailin under my control, I must appease my people first. I know there is a history between them, how different they can be, their gods, and that some even fought on opposite sides of the war. And I know how little Northerners care for outsiders, but I cannot rule over people who are at each other's throats. The commoners grow restless and resentful. Paving the roads will put hundreds into work and hundreds more into business, providing resources and supplies. They, in turn, will buy food, clothing, and dozens of other services. But more than any of that, in the end, they will all be grateful to me for feeding their families. It will unite them in support of me, and if I get their love and support, I gain leverage over my lords. That they would love you, it's great, but you need more than their love to rule. She sighs. If you ask me, you are going about this all wrong. The small folk are not as consequential as you think, you should focus on your lords. That is your true power. We will host galas and parties that will give them a better chance to know you, which can be used to show that you are a man worth following. It will require some concessions and dealings as expected, but once we win them to your side, the commoners will all fall in line sooner than later, Northern or Dornish. I already gave my word, he tells her quietly. People will have heard the word being read out about the work that is being offered. I can't go back on it now. She scooted closer against him on the bed and grasped his hands warmly within hers. I know you only wish to help them all, and you will do that in numbers you cannot imagine, but right now we will require that gold for more important endeavors in the future, she implored. And you needn't worry about what you have already said. We still have time enough to change the decision and manage everything so long as you agree. There are always ways to alter what others perceive, you can leave that to me. And years down the line, once Moat Cailin has settled down, then you can build roads and whatever else your heart desires. Until then, won't you keep the gold on standby and trust that I know what is best? She said it with that air of certainty she always possessed, one that made him want to believe it would all happen exactly as she envisioned. He only wished he could have half the same confidence in his decisions. It was logical. It would solve the problems of many, but there were others who would suffer still. I don't know, Mother. Coffers can be replenished, he found himself growing hesitant. But my people's lives cannot be. And by the time these future endeavors come, we will have gotten more gold. Once the roads are complete they will make coin enough for any future endeavors 10 times over. What is the use of just sitting all that gold there for no cause? There are 11 more years to repay the loan to the Iron Throne if that is what you are worried about. I am not worried about paying any loan, she refuted briskly, and John realized she meant it. Then what did she want to keep the gold for? I wish I could share your optimism, but with winter soon setting upon us, these lovely new jobs draining our accounts will have us rolling in debt for decades. She admitted, with an apologetic grimace. And some losses once born cannot be undone. We just can't afford that, little one. We need the gold for your future. And these men are of Dawn and the North. You think they have not seen hardship before, you think they never handled adversity. She thought it was going to fail and the coin would never come. That shook him more than he cared to admit. She had always believed in everything he had done. He began to pull away from her grasp. You may not believe so, but the roads will be finished. I know they will. My plan is going to work and we will all be better for it. I am just so sick of waiting and watching all the time and telling others there is nothing I can do. I need this to happen. Wait, please, John, she beseeched, with a sudden tinge of sudden desperation. Listen, we will think of a way. Together. A way to implement what you wish and I will help. But trust me, we really need that gold. You know I would not ask it of you if it wasn't important. Will you let this one thing go? For me. Her eyes flickered to him earnestly and John did not know how he could refuse her request. She asked for so little after all. And Mother was not the type to plead often, he couldn't even be sure that this wasn't the first time in her life. If keeping the gold truly meant that much to her, it would probably end up being used for as important a purpose as she claimed. Mayhaps his plan was too risky, mayhaps it would be for the best. Even all the gods could make a mistake before Mother ever does, he'd told Leia so many times over the years when she'd complained to him about her. So what kind of hypocrite would he be to turn against her word now? He swallowed hard. I guess But it just didn't feel right to him. Even if it was so, and the need for more gold came to pass, how could he stand aside and do nothing while he'd seen with his own eyes those in need right now? When he knew in his heart what he was doing would prove the best decision. For the righteousness you believe in, John, he remembered her telling him once, you should stand up for it always, without a second thought. Even if everyone tells you you're wrong, even if the gods themselves come down to condemn you, if you believe in your heart it is just, stand your ground and never hesitate to oppose them whoever they are. That is your duty. The duty of every man, every lord, and every king. I'm sorry, Mother, he decided. You know I value no one's counsel more than yours, but I cannot do this. This risk is worth its price. I'm doing what is best for Moat Cailin. This is my decision to make, Mother. Not yours. And my opinion on this matter will not be swayed, he informed her. The roads will proceed to be built as planned. She looked at him speechless, her words clearly failing through the unbridled shock of his decision. As my lord wishes, she acknowledges stiffly, and her voice, for the first time she'd directed it at him, sounded strangled and cold. The tips of her cheek were tinged red with anger and he knew her well enough to see she was holding back several sharper retorts. Instead she rose, walking swiftly out of his chambers, and John could only turn away praying it all would work out as he planned. Notes. As always, I appreciate every one of you who interact with this story and love hearing your opinions, so let me know what you think. Chapter 16, Would It Be So Bad, to Keep Your Head Low? Notes. See the end of the chapter for notes. Chapter text. 295 AC, 6 months later. Arya Stark. Arya had oft heard tales of Dornishmen being swarthy and small, what with their black hair and dark beady eyes. That had always confused her as a girl. Lady Ashura had never fit that picture, tall as she stood with her stunning violet eyes. And she remembered Ned's fair skin, how his pale blonde hair, the color of ash, fell to his neck complementing those big blue eyes. The Danes were stony Dornishmen, she recalled. As were many of the small folk from Starfall who had taken refuge in her brother's lands. But there were others as well, strangers who looked as she had been told. Salty and sandy Dornishmen, with olive skin burned dark by the Dornish sun, just like the girl who had just raced past, her black braid flying behind her. Arya found herself enjoying the company of Elia Sand far more than she should have. Mother would despair to hear of it, she was sure, but in the Prince of Dawn's bastard daughter, she had finally glimpsed a kindred spirit. The truth was she had never really fit in with the other girls at Winterfell. Beth Castle was the closest to her age and kind enough if not a little dull in Arya's eyes. She needn't even start on the nightmare that was Sansa and her gaggle of simpering and giggling ladies. Preening peahens with empty heads the lot of them. And while Lya had oft kept her company and even taken Arya's help in her pranks, she had never really understood either. Why would she? Lya got along with just about everyone she met and she had little interest in learning how to fire a bow or swing a sword, much less searching for flowers and rocks in the mud. Apart from the times when they would go out riding on horseback together, Arya sometimes wondered whether her sister merely tolerated her presence because Jon had put her up to it. Her new friend on the other hand came packed with an adventurous and wild nature that would have had Septa Mordane scandalized. Even the other girls like Lyra Mormont and Jenlyn Fowler made her lessons far more tolerable. They did not laugh at her crooked stitches or tease her about her horse face. A part of Arya envied the other girl whenever she spoke of her life at the Water Gardens. It made her wonder if all Dornish girls were allowed to be so free. It sounded like a dream. But she knew not everyone shared her feeling. Many were skeptical of the strangers from another land and what their presence meant. There was an uneasy peace about, yet she still occasionally heard hushed rumblings of false gods and improper ways. They were peculiar in some regards, Arya could admit. Northern lords were no slouches to dressing well, often found wearing rich velvets and silver beneath their furs, yet it felt like every Dornish noble flaunted themselves, adorned from head to toe with jewels. Even Elia was no exception as Arya made out the gold hanging from her ears and around her neck as well as the slim red gold cuffs clasped perfectly across her upper arm. She knew they liked to fight with spears rather than swords and that the Dornish food occasionally served in her brother's court left Arya's mouth burning from the spice however much she liked its taste. But for all their differences, Arya thinks, somehow it was Jon Snow that united them all. Ever since the successful undertaking of the road construction had begun, the small folk had swiftly come to adore their young lord's charity and kindness. And they tended not to be shy in their praise and support either. Her brother knew ruling well, Arya judged. Back when they would dine in the Great Hall, her father used to invite a man from Winterfell's household to eat with them. Know the men who follow you, he had told her brothers. And let them know you. Jon had taken the advice to heart, and even a step further. At least once every moon the crowds would gather in staggering numbers as their young lord came to mingle amongst them, waiting for whatever idea had taken his muse. On some occasions, he would gather singers to the streets before starting to play a jaunty melody that could make even the most impassioned musical recluses rise from their seats. Jon had always been divine with that fiddle after all, and not half bad on the harp, every note seemingly touched by magic. Arya had the fondest memories of those nights, still remembering the feel of the ground beneath her bare feet as she and Lya would hook arms and dance wildly together with unbridled merriment while thousands of smiles whirled alongside them under the light of the moon. What she knew Jon loved the most was setting up quarterstaff and sparring tourneys for the children as they said Sir Arthur Dayne had often done in Starfall. He would shuffle them by age and put wooden swords and staffs in their hands, before walking around and offering pointers on how they could improve. It was what came after, however, that everyone hungered for. What the two of them had snuck out to watch right at that very moment. About time Elia grinned, showing off her pearly teeth as Arya rode to a halt. I thought you would never catch up, Stark. Tea was not her fault, Arya thought to protest. Elia was 3 years her elder, of course she would remain faster for now. Come on, the girl yanked her arm before she had managed to open her mouth and they hurried onward together. We are already late. Underfoot, someone calls out affectionately once they wander inside. Over here. Hey, Aunt Daisy. She skips sitting beside the older woman. Her aunt is wearing the largest of grins and it gladdens Arya to see her so fulfilled. She remembers how downtrodden the Mormont heir had been upon her return to Winterfell, a wooden stump resting in place of her fighting arm and seemingly left without a purpose. How that had happened no one would say, and she had to confess it still left her in disbelief. Daisy Mormont had been one of the North's greatest legends. She was one of Arya's heroes. How could she possibly have lost a fight in single combat? She pushes her attention down to the fight below them. The greatest fighters in Moat Cailin had come together to compete in a melee, and none of the onlookers would be left disappointed, not when Jon was the draw of the yard. It was not an uncommon topic for the Dornishmen to speculate Jon would follow in the footsteps of Sir Arthur Dayne and take up the mantle of Sword of the Morning. Nor was it rare for the Northerners to liken him to Arya's uncle, Brandon Stark, who was said to be one of the finest fighters in the North. But this time his opponent towered over him, almost as large and strong as Hodder. An Umber, she thinks, of the last hearth. Arya doesn't know how he can win. Watch his feet, Arya. Her aunt spoke intently. They are flawless. He was quick, she notes. He had always been too quick. Jon twisted his way out of numerous strikes that should have caught him dead to rights, deflecting them with the hilt of his blade while biding his time. But when he decided to turn on the offensive, there was an anger to his blows that she had never seen in him before. He slashed forward over and over again, pressing furiously with a blend of speed and power until he had his adversary step inside for a thrust in a moment of desperation. Jon had been waiting for it, and that spelled the end. He knocked the blade out from his hands and sat his own against the man's throat. A roar of cheer erupted from around them, and Arya joined in celebrating her brother loudly as he grins and circles the arena, raising an arm high in acknowledgement. Hey, there is NYM. Elia points to the front of the crowd, tilting her head in question. Do you want to go closer? Arya shrugs, seeing no reason not to go along with the suggestion. I confess, Lord Snow is quite impressive considering his age. Perhaps he will be the one to free your brother's sword from her dusty keeping. And yet I heard there is another, she heard Lady Nymeria say once they had crept close enough. That night from High Hermitage. Wait, Arya furrowed her brows, did she say brother? And sure enough, when Nymeria Sand's face shifted, Arya saw a second Dornish woman by her side. One whose violet eyes happened to look very familiar. Illyria. She blurted out in disbelief. Oh my! The younger Dane's sister leaned forward, caressing her cheek fondly. Is that little Arya Stark? I can hardly believe it when I look at each of you. You have all grown so much. I didn't know you were coming here. She admitted, still stunned by her sudden presence. Neither did I, truth be told, her siblings' aunt claimed. It was a spur-of-the-moment decision and rather fine timing that I arrived in the middle of my nephew's tourney, if I do say so myself. I shan't be staying long, a few weeks at most, but I wanted to see all of you again. Is Ned here as well? She looked around, feeling a flutter of excitement in her stomach. Well over 3 years it had been since she had seen him last, and Arya had missed her friend dearly. Oh, our little Edric would have loved nothing more, I am sure. He speaks of you all the time. Illyria snickered teasingly. Unfortunately for him, he is off in Blackhaven playing page to the Lightning Lord. Arya swallowed down her disappointment at the news. Of course, Edric would get to roam the countryside learning to be a knight while she was forced to sit and learn how to run a household. You would love to be Lord Beric's page, would you not, Illyria? Nym Sand waggled her brows. Taking him out of that armor and cleaning his gear. Arya frowned, not understanding why that would make Illyria wish to be a page. Cleaning armor sounded like rather dull work to her. Quiet, you. Illyria laughed, a tinge of red seeping to her cheeks. Even you must admit he is rather dashing, your inclinations aside. Arya. A new voice sounded, and when she turned around she was met with her brother's incredulous look. What are you doing out here? Hey, Jon. She smiled up brightly at him. You were great out there today, by the way. And I was just running away from your lessons. He puts it together with a smirk before she can think of an appropriate response. However far you are from Winterfell, some things never change, do they, little sister? It is not my fault, she huffed with exasperation. Aunt Ashera is crazy. I spent an hour practicing those stupid sums and she just tore them all up and made me start all over because it was a little messy. I got them all right, I know I did. She did little different to Lya and me, Jon reminded her, barely holding back a laugh. If you had asked, we would have told you tales till the rise of the next sun until you ran for the hills. She is still far better than Septa Mordane, Arya grumbled to herself. No matter what she makes me do. Well, since you are here, what do you think? He inquired curiously. Was today to your liking? I loved it. I love everything here, she confessed. I do not want for any of it to change. Well, I suppose that is not entirely true, she amended half-heartedly. I wish I could be allowed to carry a sword. For a moment John is silent and she realizes he is actually considering the request. Pick it up, he finally gestures to the wooden piece on the floor. It may not be a real sword, yet the moment it falls in her hand she decides it is already infinitely better than the sticks she would pick from the wolf's wood and drag to Bran when forcing him to play with her. I will teach you. For true. She can't help but ask shakily. You never wanted to in Winterfell? Arya had begged and pleaded with him to teach her for as long as she could remember, yet John had steadily rebuffed her every single time. Of course not, he replied easily. If Lady